Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting tonight, May the 3rd, 2022. We'd like to welcome Colin McLean from the Journal Pioneer. It's great to have you here again, Colin. And we have a number of people, members of the public. We also have some directors with us. We have our electrical engineer, Greg Goody, with us in the back row there. We have our police chief, and we have our CAO, Rob Philpott, police chief, Dave Poirier, and we have, I believe, Kristen Dunsford is with us, our director of finance. And we have Aaron McDonald, the engineer from Technical Services, and Linda Stevenson. We also have Director Gordon McFarlane and Deputy CAO. And Councillor Snow was unable to be with us because he has another commitment. Welcome, everybody. And the first item on the agenda is the planning board, so we'll turn it over to the chair, Councillor Brian McFeely, and whatever way you're closest to the mic will be better, because it was mentioned to me last week after the meeting that all of us were a little hard to hear, so maybe it's the sound system, or we get it cranked up a bit, or try to speak a little more closely to the microphone.
We will stay as close to the mic as we possibly can,
Thank
Your
you, sir.
Worship. So we'll stay seated. So thank you, Your Worship, and we'll call the May 3rd Planning Board meeting to order and ask for a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Ramsey, that the agenda be approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. The agenda is approved. So our first item of business is 88A Ottawa Street, discretionary use. And I will read the recommendation into the record. The supporting explanation, the purpose of the application is to allow a row house up to 8 units as a discretionary use in a medium density residential R3 zone. A discretionary use requires council approval. A row house means a building that is divided into 3 or more vertically adjacent joined dwelling units separated by a vertical wall, with each unit being constructed directly on grade. Row houses do not require individual public utilities for each unit, street frontage, and cannot be subdivided. The background: an application was received from Harley Jacoby Kaiser and Rosanna Cipriano de Silva for 88A Ottawa Street, PID number 317313, to allow a row house as a discretionary use in the medium density residential R3 zone. The applicant is proposing to build a 5-unit row house at 88A Ottawa Street, and the map shows the subject property. The report under section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw: when planning board reviews a discretionary use, it has to consider the following general criteria as applicable. Conformity with all requirements of this bylaw, the zoning bylaw. Staff comment: this application requires a discretionary use approval in the R3 zone in order to conform to this bylaw. If council approves the discretionary use for a 5-unit row house, the applicant can proceed to obtain a building permit. B, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment: the discretionary use conforms to the official plan. C, suitability of the site for the proposed development. Staff comment: this site is suitable for this development, as the applicant is utilizing a vacant lot which has an existing access onto Ottawa Street. The site can accommodate the building and the on-site parking for the proposed discretionary use. D, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. Staff comment: the property is zoned medium density R3, medium density residential R3. The existing R3 zone allows up to 2 units as of right. The surrounding land uses are a mix of light industrial M1 and medium density residential R3, which are compatible with the proposed development. E, any comments from residents or other interested persons. A public meeting was held on April 13th, 2022. The public meeting notice was advertised in the March 29th edition of The Guardian. 33 letters were mailed to 26 property owners. Staff comment: no written comments were received prior to the public meeting. Alphonsus Young, 90 Ottawa Street, contacted the development officer on April 1st, 2022 to express his concerns with the row house development. The development officer indicated written comments could be sent to the city prior to or at the public meeting. Alphonsus Young submitted a petition at the public meeting containing 12 names and phone numbers. No addresses were provided, opposing the development. The petition is included in this report. Harley Jacoby Kaiser, the applicant, provided an overview of the proposed intent for the discretionary use and the value of the additional housing for the city. Alphonsus Young, 90 Ottawa Street, spoke at the public meeting. His concerns were the access location of the proposed row house and the impact of the access on his property. Debbie Young, 90 Ottawa Street, spoke at the public meeting. Her concerns were regarding access, safety to the development, neighbors, and the number of driveways on Ottawa Street in the immediate area. Ottawa Street has high traffic volume with businesses located directly across the street. Heather Gaylor, 90 Johnson Street, raised concerns about fire safety of the development and fencing around the development parking area. Kathy McIsaac, 77 Harvard Street, requested clarity on the access location for the development. Relative concerns are addressed throughout this report, and then there's the map there which shows the development off Ottawa Street and the roadway in and the proposed paved parking area and the 5-unit row housing location on the property. F, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking, and parkland for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements. Staff comment, the existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services can accommodate this discretionary use. The lot is not currently serviced with water and sewer services from the mains. Water and sewer mains on Ottawa Street front the lot and services. All costs for servicing the lot from the main to the property line are the responsibility of the property owner developer at the time of development. The sewer main on Ottawa Street is shallow, approximately 1.5 meters, so gravity sewer service is not likely to be achieved. On-light lift pumps will be required. There is a storm drainage main that runs through the property from Ottawa Street to Harvard Street. This storm drainage main manages the drainage from Johnson Street to the east end of Ottawa Street and also drains the rear yards of the surrounding properties, or surrounding homes. No building can be placed over this main. The developer will need to provide a storm drainage site plan showing how the site drainage will be collected into this system. The lot can be serviced electrically and would require 2 poles to be placed on the property. The total cost of the poles and required equipment to the property owner developer would all be covered in our standard connection fee. The proposed development will have adequate on-site parking. G, impact of the development on pedestrian vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. Staff comment, the subject property has an existing access on Ottawa Street. The required distance from the access to the nearest intersection, Johnson and Ottawa Street, is 15 meters. The proposed distance is 40 meters, which meets the requirement. Fire access, the building area is assumed to be unsprinklered, less than 600 square meters, and less than 3 stories in height. A fire department access route is not required. The length of driveway, under 30 meters, does not require a turnaround for service vehicles, i.e. garbage trucks. The traffic volume for this development would be approximately 5 vehicles, or at 1 vehicle per unit and 5 trips per day, resulting in 25 vehicles per day to and from the development. This is considered a low volume access and would not require a 2-way access. The proposed access layout is directly into the parking lot, which would allow exiting vehicles to see the entering vehicles, to allow the entering vehicles to park prior to leaving the parking area, and could be be accommodated by signage. The applicant will be required to maintain a 1-meter buffer on either side of the proposed driveway. This buffer area can accommodate the garbage bins on collection days. H, compatibility of the development with the environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Staff comment the development is compatible with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Impact on city finances and budget. Staff comment, this application does not impact city finances or budget. J, other matters as specified in this bylaw. Staff comment, there's no comment. Other matters as considered relevant. Staff comment. In 2018, staff prepared a review of this property on behalf of the estate of Dorothy Holt. The subject property, PID number 317131, was owned by the estate of Dorothy Holt, as well as the property at 15 Johnson Street, PID number 317271. City records indicate neither property was subdivided from the other. Mrs. Holt owned both properties for several years. She granted the city, the town in those days, permission to place the storm drainage line on her property at least 30-plus years ago. There is no requirement for a fence between residential properties R3 in the city bylaws. So the staff review. The city staff support the application for discretionary use to allow a row house 5-unit max in the medium density residential R3 zone. As per section 5.10, subsection B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward to council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, the application received from Harley, Jacoby, Kaiser, and Rosanna Capriano de Silva for 88A Ottawa Street, PID number 317313, to allow a row house 5-unit max as a discretionary use in the medium density residential R3 zone, be recommended to be approved by council. So if I could have a mover and a seconder for that, then we will open the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Adams. So we will open the floor for discussion. I'm going to circulate some pictures that I was asked to circulate there that the property owners had taken and wanted council to see. I don't know if most councillors were up by there anyway, so.
Are these pictures by the applicant or the property?
By the property
surrounding
The neighbors.
So neighbors, yeah, so.
Yeah.
Circulate those around for people to look at. I don't know if councillors were up and had a look anyways, but.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I have, yeah.
So we'll open the floor for any questions council may have or committee may have, and Councillor Ramsey, you're up.
Okay. I did take a drive up to Ottawa Street, and I was in somebody's yard for a long time. Just kind of walking around because I really had difficulty seeing how on earth there'd be vehicles going in and out. You're so close to the houses on both sides. Well, actually a driveway on one side, a house on the other. Obviously, it's a one-way, because I just figured there was no way that could be an in and out. So that's just one way in and one way out. Is that correct? Yeah. So I wouldn't want to be the neighbor. That's all I can say. I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor McDougall.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McFeely. Similar, I went up after the last meeting and took a look. Aaron, how wide is that? And give it to me in feet. I'm one of those feet guys. How wide is the entrance into the lot?
I think what was stated on the deed was 20 feet.
20, is it 20? It can't be 20 feet.
18,
Yeah.
well, until
Oh, I'm
it's,
sorry,
until it's
yeah.
actually pinned, you'll not know
Yeah,
exactly
right.
what's there. But what's on the person's deed was 18 or 20 feet. 18 feet.
You
But we
just took 3 feet out for the garbage?
Took 10 feet.
No.
6.
We stop allowing people, when people has a driveway or an asphalt, we say 3 feet from each side, so that you have room, that you're not right up on the
Yeah.
boundary line. So
Yeah.
if we got 18 feet, he's got 12 feet, a typical lane, one lane is 10 feet.
So, this application is here, and it's not pinned, so we don't actually know.
What we're approving is the actual use. All those details they'll have to provide us when they actually bring us in a site plan to actually develop the property, to make sure that where they,
So okay, then, if that is, I just took a quick look, and like, if that's, I figured there's gotta be some area between the neighbor's own, and then I looked at that path that goes in there, and, yeah, exactly. So, it sure don't look like anything more than 15 feet to me. If the
And that
person on
depends-
this side has a few feet, and by the tree line there, supposing that the tree line on the other side is in the proper place. I know when I plant trees, I always go on the other.
well, you're probably in the minority then.
Yeah, no. But, yeah. Anyway, that's my concern. I just,
Is we'll be asking when they, like I say, if we get through the usage part, the next step is for them to come in with an actual development with dimensions and what they're actually gonna put on, and that's at the time when we verify what's on their site plan, that they can fit it, and where the actual boundaries are.
so, and I don't mean to be hard to get along with, but
Sure.
if it was 10 feet and we actually approved the use, then the use is already approved. And I don't understand why.
They used to be
we-
approved, but whether they can actually develop, they still have to follow all the rules to develop. They're still gonna have to have the building a certain distance from the, you guys can approve the use. If they come in with a plan that the property's gonna be too close to the boundary line, that development is not gonna get approval from staff. They're gonna have to still meet the other rules that already exist.
Oh, I
It's just-
know, but,
If the issue is there, as far as, the problem is, a lot of people, we want the actual, if there's a debate on the boundary and where it is, actually, where is it? Like, most people, do you know exactly where your boundaries are at home, unless you
I
actually
guess
have them
personally,
pinned them.
before I support it, I would need to know how wide it is, actual. That's just my thought.
18 feet is on the deed that we're
Yeah,
giving from the
on
deed. The deed, as far as the legal deed of the property, is say, this
Okay.
is your deed, 18 feet.
What does that mean? It's not actually 18, going in and take other people's properties?
No, what we're saying is, what's on the deed is 18 feet. Somebody's supposed to own 18 feet of frontage.
So until it's pinned and surveyed,
But they're gonna pin, the surveyor is gonna pin 18 feet.
yeah.
Well, the issue is gonna be a problem is if you don't know if you're a neighbor and you don't know exactly where the boundary is. We're not getting in the middle of two neighbors' disputes. The property gets pinned by a legal surveyor, and when the property is vacant, lots of people occupy more than they own, or they don't know exactly if the property changes hands, where are the actual pins? And a lot of times it turns, that's why we don't get into saying, there's the boundary. We go by the deed that's registered with the lawyers in the registry and get it surveyed. And then we wanna make sure that that's on the site plan to say where the boundaries are on the site plan.
Councillor Durant?
Thanks, Councillor. Just a question that I had, just kind of looking at the map and looking at the property I was by as well. When it comes to like setbacks, is there a certain date and time where new builds had to be so far back from a property line? Because just, not that I'm proposing we start moving houses or anything, but I'm just wondering, like, looking at the top down, it almost looks like existing structures are close to, too close by today's standards to the property line. I'm just wondering when those setback rules like came into effect. Was it before or after, I guess, the existing structures were built? I assume after.
I can't say when these properties were built, but you can see by some of the square red boxes, there is encroachments on this property now that are, this person owns it and doesn't have anything
That's what I
there.
mean,
So
and
there's
that would lead to why it looks smaller than it
Right.
should, because,
there is encroachments on those properties now.
yeah.
Like the neighboring properties, there appears to be, whether it was permission from the owner or the previous owner and allowed to have a shed on it, or there's nothing behind there and I'll use it there till now. That's what appears on there. Again, that's the boundaries to be determined. That's the only boundaries we have on the mapping we have. Again, before any development, we recommend them, they get it pinned, so you're not into an argument with your neighbor where the boundary is.
So it stands to reason that it could look like there's not 18 feet there because there's structures that are
Correct, yep.
closer than they should be.
Yep.
Okay.
Your worship.
Just a quick question from looking at the pictures and being over there as well myself, Mr. Chairman. I know over the last year we had another situation in the Harvard Street area where somebody, according to the people, somebody built too closely to their property and created a water problem there. But when I'm not sure if it's an optical illusion or what, but this looks like it's a lower area. And if that was built up to a driveway or to whatever, where would the runoff be? Maybe you mentioned that in your
That dotted line that goes down the middle,
yeah.
that's where there's an existing storm pipe runs down through that property now that they would just have to tap into to drain that existing property itself.
But
The
it
city
looks like
had-
it's a bit lower than the rest of the land, and the water would drain out there. So if it comes up, you say it wouldn't run into the other neighbors' properties, it would go down the drain.
We would ask the developer, when they bring in to develop the property, a site plan and show how they plan on handling the drainage. Again, we're at the preliminary stages for the land use, not the, but we do identify those things as was identified in the report. I can't remember the exact wording, but it says there's a storm line going through there, and we'll be requiring a report from the developer and to show us how they plan to drain the abutting the property.
I'm wondering too, and I guess maybe it's none of my business, but I'm wondering, like, somebody obviously has maintained that property over the last number of years. Would the neighbors have a squatter's claim sort of thing on it?
I am not a lawyer.
We got two in the house. Anyway, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, but
Thank you, your worship. Deputy Mayor.
I guess, Director Aaron, I want to be clear, when you say that when the land is pinned, it's 18 feet.
18 feet on Ottawa Street is what we're told that is written on the deed.
Okay,
The deed is your legal description of your property that defines what you have, and that's what we're told is 18 feet. So the surveyor would research down at the registry, come back with the actual deeds, and they would have to go out and pin the entire properties for if
okay.
there's any kind of a boundary dispute.
All right, so, and I'm trying to follow your comments that the city can't be involved in a dispute between the owner of that land and the residents that have lived there. But I guess what's the question in my mind is, if the people built along that area, whoever owned the land, would there not have been anything said at that time, or would they have had the rights to that land if it was part of their purchase?
They just look like there's, again, we're back into dipping into area. We're saying we don't get involved with them because we're not lawyers, but if I buy a property, if I don't get a proper survey done,
Right,
you're not gonna know that there's properties or things encroaching onto your property. But as was stated, this property, the lady had this property for years and owned one of the properties on Johnson Street. So the one building that's on there was probably her building on our second parcel. Right?
okay.
So that building is legitimately on that other parcel because she owned both the parcels, you know?
Okay.
I say
So
she, it was a Mrs. Holton.
But I guess that's where my question is arising, is if she owned that land, she had a
owned both parcels of land.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is there any record that shows that she might have sold some of that land to that point of where the water line runs?
No, she sold the front parcel because unfortunately she passed, I think, and then the front parcel got sold to somebody else, yeah.
Okay.
The back parcel is still, I think, now to these people as far as that are proposing, yeah, the
Okay.
development. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McDougall.
I just have one other question, and it's regarding the lift station. So you're saying that the land is low there, and there's a requirement for the developer to put in a private lift station?
We're just advising them that some people have, if your property is low, it's not it's a one individual building, it's not an entire lift station. We're just advising that when we do a preliminary review, there's the depth of the sewer in the street.
Right.
Please be advised it's only 5 feet deep. You may need to put your own lift in, or if they don't plan on putting anything, some people go, I'm just slab on grade, so I got 5 feet of grade, I can make it work. We just like to give them a heads up before they do anything. There's the depth of the existing services before they get too far. So if your house, in your street, if you had services in your basement, for example, and it was lower than the sewer. Some people put a small lift on the couple fixtures that are in the basement, pump it up 3 feet, and it drains out.
Yeah.
We're just making them aware that the services are not standard 8 feet deep in the street. It's only 5 feet deep, just so they have a heads up, and they can do their own calculations as to where they plan on going.
And that's always a private lift station?
The city would never own it, that's the individual
Okay,
owner.
that
It's,
would-
yeah, it stays
That
with
was-
with the
That was my
landowner.
concern, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Ramsey.
Thank
and then-
Thank you. Aaron, is it common practice, like so if we have a little subdivision with 5 or 6 or 7 units, whatever, that we would have a single lane into to those units? Like, is that, I've just not heard of, like, I guess I would think that it would be in and out. I've just not heard of that, and it just, that's kind of what
Yeah.
the subdivision, that's fine with me. It's,
We have a lot of them that are, I think we went back and looked at our street lengths when this question came up before on, with like, an obvious one, I shouldn't say an obvious one, more common one that people mention is Wilmot Lane,
Wilmot
next to
Lane.
College of Piping out there. It's a small little lane in way. There's 2 or 3 houses at the back. Someone's looking to do something recently, and they're in there fixing a water main, I think, and it's only 1 lane width. People are pulling off on the shoulder if they see somebody, they don't get all the way out.
But is that like something that's been there forever? Like, or it just doesn't seem that common to me since I became a counselor that we've ever approved anything like this.
Yep.
So it's just kind of new, I guess, so
Yeah,
I wondered.
And we just asked staff to review that and get back their opinion on it, yeah.
Okay.
But we have lots of things that are.
Even if it's 18 feet, is that still going to be enough to come in and go out and put the garbage cans there and?
Well, let's forget the garbage cans for a second. If the garbage cans are gonna fit, if we can't pave right up to the edge, we say we keep 3 feet back from the edge. They're stating there's the 3 feet area if you wanna place the garbage can on the end once a week when you bring them out.
But how can we forget them? Because they have to come out every
What if
week.
they can fit in the 3 feet that you're not paving to the edge? I put my garbage can not 3 feet off the edge of my actual driveway. There's a strip there that I could actually place my garbage can and not be on the asphalt.
But that's just the single lane you're talking about still. So
Or
there's
even my
no
own,
possibility
even my
of
own
it.
that's a double, I still don't put the garbage can, I put it off there so you can back freely in and out of the asphalt. You're talking 18 feet, you take 3 feet off each side of 6, you got 12 feet left for a driveway. A standard rural road, 1 lane is only 10 feet wide.
One lane.
1 lane is 10
Yeah.
feet wide, so we're saying it's still wide enough to be a
But I'm
12-foot
I'm just saying, Aaron, when I went up there to look at it, it certainly didn't look, I don't know where the 18 feet is and any of that, but, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Your worship.
Well, just a couple of comments. I think there are streets, like the new ones in the Pope Road there, was it the McCormick Development, they're single street in? I mean, a street in, but there's no.
They
no
might be,
cul-
they
no
might be
cul-de-sac.
wider, but they're private, they didn't go to the full, also they stayed as a private street, they didn't go to the full. I think they might be 2, but they got like 4, up on Pope, I think it's 4 or 6 unit buildings on it, so there's
Yeah.
probably
But no
25
cul- no-
units in there.
You can
No
pass,
cul-de-sac.
you can,
No cul-de-sac in the end of
Yeah.
them.
No, they actually put a gap between the buildings with a T to allow the service vehicles to turn halfway.
One other question, and I'm just thinking out loud here, because I got no idea how this is gonna go. Is it possible to have an entrance onto Johnson Street some way, shape, or form? Are there any locations there that, an entrance or an exit, or is that?
The
they're all-
the 3 properties are fully developed, and the one owner that had this, there's not enough width there that they left to give them. You wouldn't recreate a new access without giving enough between the existing houses if it didn't exist already. And the other part, we're talking the width, the property is zoned R3, I think it's noted in there, they automatically could go in and put a semi-detached side-by-side, there could be 2 units in there as of right. So
so,
we're still dealing with this access in and
so
out.
there could be a duplex put in there now
Correct.
with, and this doesn't need to come to council.
It's zoned R3, so the R2s are automatic, which is a side-by-side. They would still have to meet our standards when they come in to develop and say, be a certain distance away. Is there enough width to get a driveway in? Can you stay a meter away? We would have issued, if they come in and met all those things, we would issue. The lot is a large lot in back. They want to go more than 2 units. Since it's in an R3, once it's more than 2, it follows this discretionary use process, which requires notification and bringing through planning board. But they could tomorrow come in and say, okay, that's not gonna work, okay, great, let's go in and put the 2 units in.
And that way it wouldn't have to come back to us either?
Correct. Long as they comply. if I'm got a single-family house and I comply with all the rules, it doesn't come to you. If it's zoned R2 and meets all the rules you guys have laid out, it doesn't come to you. It's only when you do something, we put this R3 in to come to yous, because before, that fit under the R4 category. And everybody was, some of them was more okay with the 3 and 4 unit stuff, they just didn't want a 12-unit building. So we said, okay, to cover that off and take that out of the R4, we moved it into the R3 and said it must come before you every time. So it wasn't automatic. So they could tomorrow, they could,
I just want to finish up there, Mr. Chairman. The bottom part of my screen doesn't come right over to the next street, which is at Harvard.
Harvard, yeah.
So there's no way from that checkered property you come down to Harvard with an exit.
correct, that storm pipe, that storm pipe does go all the way out there, but that's not an access, that's one sole property, yeah.
So there's no way a right-of-way or an exit can be put there. Right. Thank you.
Okay, no more questions, I see. I have one, well, I was going to ask about the duplex, but we covered that off. So the traffic counts that you have in the report talked about one vehicle per unit 5 times a day. Most households now have a couple of vehicles.
And his 5 maybe, how many times are people like yourselves, are you leaving your house 5 times a day with your car? Like, is everybody, that's, we tried to say, okay, yeah, we try to say on average, right? That,
Yeah.
is it 1 or 2, and is it 5 or 3 or 4?
Well, yeah, you
Yep.
could argue those numbers all
Exactly, that's why I just
all
tried to
day
say.
long. Anyways, planning board, what's your wish in terms of,
Well, it has to go to council for a
it has
vote.
to go to council for a vote, so
And it needs a recommendation from this committee to bring forward to council.
we have the recommendations there. It's been moved and seconded, so we either pass it and it goes forward with the support of planning board, or it's defeated and it goes forward without the support of planning board. They will go forward one way or the other
So the recommendation is to bring it forward to council for a vote.
for approval, yeah. So I'll read the recommendation again into the record there. The application received from Harley Jacoby Kaiser and Rosanna Cipriano de Silva, and I apologize for any pronunciation errors there, for 88A Ottawa Street, PID number 317313, to allow a row house 5-unit max as a discretionary use in the medium-density residential R3 zone be recommended to be approved by council. So if planning board, if we pass that, and I should explain to the public, the voting members of planning board are Councillor Ramsey and Councillor Adams and the mayor and myself. If we pass that motion, it's going forward with our recommendation that it be approved by council. And if we defeat that motion, then it's going forward without a recommendation, basically.
So that's why I just asked the question, Mr. Chairman. Either way, it goes to council.
It goes to council.
So
It's council's decision in the end.
So does the motion have to be recommended that it be approved, or just recommended that we go to council for
Has to
a
be
vote?
approved. We
Yeah.
have to vote.
The recommendation is that it be approved, and if it's defeated, it goes to council without the recommendation of
Yeah,
planning
That's
board.
right.
I know the recommendation is there, exactly what you said, but can somebody vote to recommend that it go to council for approval, and then obviously you can vote against it if you want?
Yeah, and you can
yeah,
vote
you can
against
vote
it.
however you
You can
want.
vote against it when it gets to council too.
I
Yeah.
understand that, but I'm wondering, I still haven't, I guess I've always trying to figure that out, that if it's a recommendation to council, I thought it should be just a recommendation to take to council for a full vote. Anyway, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
It's planning
CAO
board.
Yeah.
Rob.
The recommendation will go forward to council, but the recommendation from planning board can be, if you will, a negative recommendation. In other words, they voted not to endorse it, right? But it still has to go forward to council, the full council for a vote.
It just goes forward without our endorsement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Ramsey?
No, I'm just waiting to vote.
So everybody ready for the vote? So all those in favor with the recommendation, say aye. Contrary, nay.
Yay.
The motion is defeated, so it'll go forward without the recommendation of planning board. Correct? It's scheduled to go to council on a regular monthly meeting, May 16th. I can't be here that evening. I can't join virtually because I'll be on a plane at that time of the meeting. We do have a special meeting on May 11th, and I'm wondering if we could move it to the agenda for the May 11th meeting and vote with it then. I don't know what's all on that agenda that night, May 11th.
I haven't got my calendar.
I guess I would, it is in my ward, so I would really, we have a special council meeting that evening, and it is in my ward, so I would really would like to be there to represent the view of the people. You know.
That's fine.
So it will be May 11th.
Time?
The time of that meeting at May 11th is? There's a couple other agenda items there, so it'll be later on in the agenda. So May 11th it will be. Okay, great. Thank you, Council, for that.
So I just want to double check, Chairman McFeely, Councilman McFeely. So will the residents, whatever the time it's going to be, will the residents be made aware of the timing?
Well, it's no way of really determining the timing, because if we get into debate on one of the other agenda items, it could drag on.
True.
But the meeting starts at 6.
And there's 2 other items before.
There's 2 other items before. They can join virtually the early part of the meeting, get a sense of how
When-
things are moving, and then come for the latter part if they wish. So are we good there?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay.
You still have the floor?
I do. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you. Our next agenda item is mobile sales establishment on MacEwen Road. Find my notes here. Okay, so the recommendation, the mobile sales establishment, the application from Richard Inglis. Supporting explanation, the purpose of the application is to allow a mobile sales establishment, fork it over, to operate a 214 MacEwen Road, at the site of by right truck parts vehicle storage yard. The background. Excuse me. Richard Inglis is applying to operate a mobile sales establishment at 214 MacEwen Road from May to October, weather permitting. The proposed hour of operation are 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., Tuesday through Saturday. The location being proposed is owned by Right Truck Parts 2000 Inc. And here's the site plan for PID number 319673. That shows the parking lot and where the mobile sales establishment would be located. And you can see where it's off MacEwen Road there. Mobile sales establishment means a business located in a motorized vehicle or movable structure that is towed or moved by a motorized vehicle, and where all of the goods, wares, or foodstuff that are offered for sale are contained entirely within the motorized vehicle or movable structure, but does not include a lunch truck. The report. Under Section 13 of the City of Summerside Licensing Bylaw CS-21, the bylaw states the following. Mobile sales establishment. A, any person or company seeking a license to operate a mobile sales establishment in the city shall make application therefore to the council. B, licenses may be granted for a mobile sales establishment to conduct business on a maximum of 2 locations in the city, and each application shall be accompanied by a letter of permission from the owners of the property on which the mobile sales establishment will be located. C, council shall allow or refuse the application based on considerations of safety, desirability, impact on established businesses in the city, public convenience, and such other considerations as it deems appropriate. D, council may attach terms and conditions to the approval of the license if granted, including but not limited to 1, hours and days of operation, 2, health code requirements, 3, litter control, 4, approval locations, approved locations. E, the licensing for a mobile sales establishment shall be valid for the calendar year in which the application is made only. A new application is required to council for each calendar year. F, no appeal shall lie from a decision of council respecting a mobile sales establishment. Staff comment, Mr. Inglis has provided written permission from By Right Truck Parks 2000 Inc., Robert Glant. Staff review, city staff support the application received from Richard Inglis to operate a mobile sales establishment called Fork It Over at 214 MacEwen Road, property owned by Right Truck Parts 2000 Inc. As per section 5.10, subsection B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward for council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, the application received from Richard Inglis to operate a mobile sales establishment, Fork It Over at 214 MacEwen Road, PID number 319673, be recommended to be approved by council. And if we could have a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Ramsey. We would open the floor to any questions or discussions. Not seeing any lights. Oh, Councillor Campbell.
Just a concern, there's an awful lot of traffic on MacEwen Road. We don't have much road.
There is a lot of traffic on MacEwen Road.
Driving on and driving off.
Yeah, but it is already an approved entrance and exit, so not like we're creating another. But it's a valid point. Any other comments or questions? Seeing no lights, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. We'll keep on moving, Your Worship, to the next piece is a variance at 6 Marion Drive. Supporting explanation. The purpose of the variance is to allow a rear yard setback of 0.9 meters, 3 feet from a pool deck guard where a 1.2 meter, 4-foot rear yard setback is required. And the drawings there show the property line and the proposed deck adjacent to the house. In the background, the applicant has applied for a permit to build a deck 1.2 meters, 4 feet above grade, complete with a 1.2 meter, 4-foot guard around the existing pool. The applicant is proposing a variance to rear yard setbacks to allow the deck with the required guard to surround the back of the pool. To process a major variance more than 10% subject to council approval. The development officer shall provide written notice to all assessed property owners within a radius of 30 meters, or 98.4 feet of the subject lot, describing the variance sought and inviting written comments within 7 clear days. The application is reviewed by the planning board. The planning board makes a recommendation to council, and council may approve, deny, or approve a variance less than requested. 20 letters were mailed to 13 property owners with a written comment submission deadline for April 22nd, 2022. No comments were received as of April 26, 2022, end of working day. The proposed rear yard setback does not meet the 1.2 rear back setback for a pool deck guard as per the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The applicant did reach out to the rear yard neighbor prior to applying for the variance. So the report, under section 7.2, the zoning bylaw, variance application shall be considered by council, planning board, or the development officer as applicable against the following tests for justifying a variance. All applicable criteria must be met. A, that the hardship is due to unique physical conditions of the lot or property, including a small lot size, irregular lot shape, existing building location, or on the property, or exceptional topographical conditions which make it impractical to develop in strict conformity with the bylaw standards. Exceptional topographical conditions may include but are not limited to tree slopes of land, etc. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. The single-family dwelling and the pool location are existing. The property owner has limited distance between the house and the property line. The pool is currently 4 feet from the house, and the owner would like to continue the deck around the perimeter of the pool. That the proposed variance meets the general intent of the official plan. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. The variance meets the intent of the official plan. C, that the proposed variance meets the general intent of the zone. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. The variance meets the intent as pool and deck are permitted in the zone, the R1 zone. D, that the proposed variance would not impact negatively on adjacent properties or on the essential character of the surrounding neighborhood, including taking into consideration any comments from neighbors. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. 20 letters were mailed to 13 property owners within 30 meters of the boundaries of the subject property. Comments from the adjacent property owners were due on or before October 22nd, 2022. No verbal or written comments were received from the notified property owners. Tech Services staff review. Technical service staff support the rear yard variance application from Marcel and Yvonne Gallant. As per section 7.3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward for council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, the application received from Marcel and Yvonne Gallant to allow a rear yard of 1.2 meters, a 25% variance, be recommended to be approved by council. And we would look for a mover and a seconder for that recommendation. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Adams. And we would open the floor to any comments.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I didn't see your...
No, go ahead.
Your worship.
I noticed there it says no verbal or written comments were received. Does that mean there were no letters of support for it as well, I guess, or against it?
There was none against and none for, I guess, so.
Thank you.
Councillor McDougall.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that the Glants have a neat little property there, and the only thing that I heard was in support of the application, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
Okay, seeing no further lights, if you're ready for the question, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. So that will go forward with the recommendation of planning board. And our final one tonight is 815 Reed Drive, preliminary subdivision approval. The recommendation, supporting explanation, purpose, to subdivide PID number 615278 into 50 residential lots. So this would be Starlight Estate Phase 3 on a current vacant property. The property is zoned R4. Background, an application was received from McDuff Holding Inc. for PID number 615278 to subdivide this parcel into 50 residential lots. 38 lots would be semi-detached dwellings, 6 lots, 4-unit town row houses, and 4 lots, 6-unit town row houses, and 2 lots for multi-residential apartment buildings. The proposed lots are indicated on the preliminary plan prepared by HGE Engineering Inc. on April 18th, 2022, and the map is attached there, Your Worship. Report. As required under section 3.6 of the subdivision site development bylaw, council, planning board, and the development officer shall consider the following general criteria when reviewing development applications under this bylaw as applicable. A, conformity with the bylaw. Staff comment, this subdivision promotes smart growth, making effective use of the land, and applies to the principle of orderly and following. As a result of the public meeting for the rezoning of this land, a public meeting was held on February 16, 2022. At this meeting, the property owner stated that the land would be developed as R4 housing, therefore no public open house was warranted for the preliminary subdivision approval process. B, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment, this subdivision conforms to the official plan as the land use is designated as residential land use. Schedule B, future land use plan, and the criteria E, F, G, and H identified in the Parks and Green Space Plan, Section 8.4. C, conformity with the zoning bylaw. Staff comment, the proposed lots within the subdivision will be required to meet the development standards of the R4 zone. D, orderly and following nature of the development. Staff comment, the development promotes residential growth and is an example of infilling vacant land. E, physical suitability of the site for the proposed development, including avoidance of natural hazards, undue water runoff, or environmental damage. Staff comment, the proposed development has physical site suitability. There are no natural hazards. Water runoff will be addressed with a storm drainage system, and no environmental damage should occur. F, compatibility of the proposed development with the present and future surrounding patterns of street, lots, and services, including conformity with any city concept plans. Staff comment, the proposed development is compatible with present and future patterns of streets, lots, and services, and conform to city concept plans. The development will connect to Schooner Street, which is under construction, and the street stub to the future Starlight Estates Phase 2. G, adequacy of the applicant's proposals for traffic circulation, parking, pedestrian access, water supply, sewage disposal, and storm drainage, including the adequacy of the city streets and services to handle the increased loads. Staff comment, the proposed development is adequate for the traffic circulation, parking, and pedestrian access. The proposed residential street will be designed to meet a 50-km/h local street speed limit posted at 40 km/h. The proposed street would have a 8.8-meter width with concrete curbs. The paved shoulder on the proposed street will allow for safe pedestrian traffic. The city's water supply in the area is adequate for the new subdivision, and the sewage treatment plant can handle the additional loading. New water and sewer infrastructure will have to be installed to service this new development, including a sewer lift station at the developer's cost. This water and sewer servicing is outlined in the preliminary infrastructure plan submitted by the developer. The developer is responsible for the zoning change increases in sewer loading that amounted to a cost of $77,700. All infrastructure is to be designed and installed to meet city standards. The property PID number 72165 to the northeast of this development will require allowances for this development for sewer and possibly water, storm, electrical, and street connections if services and roadway connections are not granted across the Confederation Trail. The Green Space Plan, Section 7.3.2 indicates a future conservation area, North Reeds Creek, shown as 820 on the map, an extension of the existing South Reed Creek, which is 440. Section 7.3.3 indicates Reeds Creek Greenway, that's a mouthful. 790 would run from Reeds Creek Park, 470 to the Confederation Trail 400. The North Reeds Creek Extension 820 and the Reeds Creek Greenway 790 will require further review by staff and further discussion with the developer. And the maps are they're showing all of that. H, the suitability of the parkland provision. Staff comment, parkland dedication is required for a residential major subdivision. At council discretion, the parkland will be 10% land or $3,500 per acre cash in lieu for high-density residential land use. The parkland dedication is determined based on the buildable area of their property. The developer has not provided the buildable area of the development at the time of this report. Therefore, staff cannot calculate the parkland dedication at this time. Once the buildable area has been determined, staff will calculate the parkland dedication and advise the planning board and council. Staff will review the parkland dedication with community services to determine if the parkland is needed in the area or is the monetary dedication preferred. The parkland contribution shall be put in a fund reserved solely for acquiring or expanding public parks within the city. I, impact on city finances and budget, staff comment, not applicable. J, proof of conformity with any applicable provincial legislation and regulation, staff comment, the Confederation Trail intersection with the proposed streets will be secured by the developer prior to the city taking ownership of the street right away. K, other matters as considered relevant, staff comment, the proposed street names will be put forth by the developer at a later date. Staff review, the technical service staff recommend the application of McDuff Holding Inc. for a preliminary subdivision to subdivide PID number 615278 into 50 residential lots be recommended to be approved by council, subject to the following. 1, the developer shall satisfy all municipal servicing requirements. 2, the developer enters into a subdivision construction agreement. 3, the developer shall satisfy the parkland dedication requirements. 4, the developer shall satisfy the North Reeds Creek Conservation Area Extension 820 and the Reeds Creek Greenway 790. As per section 8.5, the subdivision site development bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward to council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, the preliminary subdivision approval be granted to McDuff Holding Inc. to subdivide PID number 615278 into 50 residential lots, Starlight Estates Phase 3, be recommended to be approved by council. So we would welcome a mover and a seconder for that. So moved by Councillor Ramsey and seconded by Councillor Adams. Any questions or comments? Councillor Adams.
Just for those that might be watching at home, how is the address on that a Reed Drive address as opposed to a Water Street East address? If it's, because I'm just thinking all the other Starlight ones were Water Street East.
The ownership was addressed in 815 Reed Drive, so we use whatever's on the assessment data for the
Right.
address.
So will that change then? Like, how does that work with?
Once the streets are developed, they'll all have their
They'll
own
all
street
have their
names and
own,
they'll
but
all be signed
it's-
civic addressing.
Right,
Yeah.
so it just stays under the one that it was, property it came out of until.
Yeah, it's just for us to have a record of
Right.
relative
I
location
just
of
thought
where
if
it is.
people are looking, they might be like, how is it Reed Drive when the rest of them are Water Street East? Thanks.
The owner actually lives over here.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing no lights? Ready for the question? We'll call the question. All those in favor with the recommendation say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. That, your worship, concludes planning board, so I should call, I guess, for a adjournment of planning board. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Adams. So we are adjourned.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely. We'll continue on with the next committee. Sorry. We'll continue on with the Bylaw Policy Review Committee. The Councillor Adams, please. Councillor Adams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we'll call the meeting to order, and there's just one item on the agenda, but if I can call for a mover for that. So moved. Justin, second. And I guess I'll pass it over to CAO Rob and Ian with legal, and you guys can walk us through it.
Walk us through it. All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Mayor and all members of council. So the purpose of this single agenda item for BPR committee tonight is really to try and bring a recommendation to council on some work that the committee has done over the, I guess, not too distant past around concerns that we've been hearing both in the community and through council about the unsightly premises bylaw and also some vacant properties in our community and how best can we try to address them using all regulatory tools at our disposal as possible. So BPR committee undertook a review of the dangerous, hazardous, and unsightly premises bylaw, and we engaged our external legal counsel to undertake a review of that and to look at what other jurisdictions were doing with respect to the treatment of unsightly premises and how that was enforced and that sort of thing, along with vacant properties. And as part of your package, a proposed new bylaw is in your package there. And also sent separately to you was also, I guess, a companion document called a vacant properties bylaw, which would tie into some of the proposed changes that are outlined in this new bylaw. So what I'm going to do for the members of council is I'm going to turn it over to Ian. He was the legal eagle who spearheaded the research and some of the work that helped support what BPR committee is bringing to you tonight. So Ian.
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. So as Rob said, there's two new bylaws before you this evening for your review and consideration. The first is the unsightly property bylaw, which is basically the existing bylaw is called the dangerous, hazardous, and unsightly property bylaw. And as I understand, that's been in place for quite some time. In recent years, with amendments to the Building Codes Act and other regulatory amendments, some of the provisions in that bylaw no longer really fit well. And so part of our review was to see, okay, how can we ensure that the bylaw that's in place accords better with the current state of the law. And so the bylaw that's in front of you right now, the unsightly property bylaw, is drafted very much consistently with the provincial act. There's a provincial act called the Unsightly Property Bylaw, or Unsightly Property Act, rather. And it provides rules and definitions of what is an unsightly property and certain rules for dealing with those properties. So the bylaw that's in front of you is very consistent. The rationale being that the Municipal Government Act says that council has the authority to deal with unsightly property, but it doesn't really define what an unsightly property is. And so the thinking was that if we defined it within the city, consistently with the way the province defines it, then you can be more sure that you're resting on solid legal footing by doing that. When the province says you can deal with unsightly property, if you define it the same way the province does, then again, you can feel you're on more solid legal ground. I see you might have a question.
Question there.
Certainly,
In
Your
regards to something like that, if the courts or a judge has made a ruling, what's unsightly and what's not, or whatever, is there any sense in us putting something in there that we know the courts, there's a case law where a case was dismissed?
Yeah, so we certainly wouldn't want to do that, Your Worship. So I'm not aware of any case where the province has... the court would review the definition that's set out in the legislation. And so the definition that's in the bylaw before you is entirely consistent with that, with the one exception, I'll say, that long grass is added in. That's been one of the issues, as I understand, under the current bylaw, that's a perennial issue. And so long grass is added to the definition of an unsightly property in the city.
There was a case a number of years ago, and I remember it because I was mayor at the time, but it had gone to court, unsightly property. The gentleman wouldn't cut his grass, and it was 2 feet high all summer and dried out and mice in it, and neighbors were scared of fire. He went to court. He wouldn't cut the grass. He went to court, and the judge ruled at the time, what's unsightly to you may not be unsightly to somebody else. And when the guy won his case, he went and cut the grass. So that's, those may be hard to prove.
And that's a fair point, Your Worship. In all of these cases, there are lines to be drawn, and sometimes those lines aren't clear.
Well, that's why I've just asked the question about what can we put in here that, I guess, what's the old saying? You look for teeth in a bylaw where you can do something. We've had, the reason why you're here and the reason the policy committee is looking at this, we've had some situations over the last couple of years trying to deal with something, and we get so far, and then the provincial regulations would come in. Bruce knows what one we're talking about. There's a certain place that I guess our inspectors were not allowed inside the property and even on the property and everything else because of provincial health laws and the provincial regulations. So it sort of tied the city's hands to take that next step or to have some teeth in it, and we're still caught in a situation where it's really upsetting to some of the neighbors, but we've taken it, as far as I know, as far as we can, but I think the provincial regulations are in place to the point where we can't move any further, so I'm just trying to figure out how way we can. This gentleman is really upset. Councillor McDougall knows very well. He's been trying to deal with it.
Yeah. Ian, just on 4.2A.
Yes.
Dilapidated building or structure includes a building or structure with or without structural deficiencies that by virtue of a broken window, torn roofing, or other defects is in a condition of substantial disrepair. That's a pretty broad brush.
Indeed, and I think that's one of the things that's important to make council aware of before this even gets to first reading. So the definition of unsightly property that you currently have in your bylaw is pretty narrow. This definition would broaden that quite a bit. Like I said, it's consistent with provincial law, but it would be broadening it quite a bit. And there are risks associated with that, and costs, I think, associated with that in terms of a greater administrative burden, that your staff will be potentially responding to more calls, as may you. So that is certainly something to consider. The current bylaw has a pretty narrow definition, and the bylaw that is proposed in here is much broader.
And can I just add to Councillor McDougall's question on 4.2D? The fire is clearly the inspector. That's the situation that I mentioned earlier, that our fire chief and other people, they've gotten so far, and then because of the provincial regulations, couldn't do anything else. So I guess it's going to be awfully difficult to get some kind of teeth in there that would get around these provincial regulations. And I'm not saying to get around them, but to satisfy the neighbors somewhat about this certain property that is not maintained and looked after, and I think we are not even allowed to go inside the building for the inspectors.
Yeah, Your Worship, under the Municipal Government Act, a warrant is required to enter a dwelling home. So there is the possibility of getting a warrant to get into a dwelling, but it's a pretty high burden to do that. This bylaw relates more so to the appearance of a property, more on the outside, rather than necessarily what's going on the inside. Your building codes bylaw deals with structural deficiencies and things like that in a building.
Yeah, I understand all that, but I'm just, what I'm saying is, we have some situations that, and we hate to say it, but we can't get it any further to get the problem solved for the neighbors.
But
because of some of the, because of some of the provincial regulations that we respect.
But to that point, Your Worship, I think part of the issue has been, as Ian has said, has been I'll say the relatively narrow definition that we have in our bylaw right now of unsightly properties, right? And I guess where we're going with this particular discussion is if you broaden that definition, that may give the city a little bit more wherewithal to address some of the problem issues, if we will. Thank you.
I believe Councillor McColeman, the Deputy Mayor,
I think when we get to the part 2, the addendum, or where it gives the amounts and things like that, I think that's where it will help the city be able to really enforce that piece of it that you're speaking of.
And could I just ask the question, as this was being reviewed, I would imagine they looked at bylaws in other municipalities, and we can always learn from other municipalities, sometimes their regulations. So I'm just wondering if you picked anything up and adding something that is being put in place that probably should have been before, or but maybe I guess you just said it in general.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a good question and a good point, Your Worship. I think that's kind of why we're here in a lot of ways. Some of the other municipalities, I think, have already taken steps to make their unsightly property bylaws more consistent with the definitions in the Provincial Act, and that's kind of what we'd be doing here as well.
I guess another quick question, and sorry to take a whole lot of time here, but we had so many debates over this thing, but graffiti, painting, will they look at it, they're very artistic. You even see some of the provincial signs on the highway with fancy painting work, and some of it is still there, so are they looking at it as, oh, this is a very talented person, or are they looking at it as somebody that's damaging property, or?
That's a good question, actually, Your Worship. The bylaw that's in front of you doesn't specifically reference graffiti. It doesn't specifically reference that. If there was a desire on the part of council to make that clearer, then that could certainly be something to be added.
I know, Chief is here, and that's not an easy situation to deal with either, so. But anyway, if this is gonna try and help us some way, shape, or form, that's great, but we all understand it's not easy to get these kinds of situations cleared up. We've gone through them, in a number of areas in the city. We have one on Water Street there that's been vacant, and the owner lives in Ontario, and windows are smashed out of it, and we're trying to do our thing there, but there are some others. But anyway, if this is gonna help the situation, I think we certainly all support it.
And we did have a very good discussion on it this last time, through Councillor Carey. We did with Ian and CAO. We talked about all of these similar things that, just trying to find something that's going to help us be able to pursue that with a little bit more teeth. And it seems like it will be something, I think, as we move forward.
Yeah, so just to kind of explain, so when the new Building Codes Act came in, they defined what a dangerous building is, and the Building Codes Act provides the authority to determine that with your building official. It kind of took that seemingly out of council's determination, although it provided the council can expand the definition of what dangerous is to make it a stricter definition. And so in putting together this bylaw, we've kind of said, okay, the definition of what a dangerous building is, one that's structurally unsound or something like that falls under, is a building code matter. And that's something that, as a result of its appearance, is maybe impacts property values or looks very unsightly in relation to neighboring properties. That's what this bylaw is about, the appearance of properties, more so than the structure of properties.
It's only been a few weeks ago, we saw a report where they were suggesting that people not mow their lawns in May.
No mow May, I believe it's called.
So can't you imagine if that happened? That's the month that they really take off, but what do you do with all the mice and the flies and where is this going to anyway? I'm not suggesting that it shouldn't be done, but we're living in a changing world, I tell you that.
Under the current bylaw, Your Worship, the length of grass that would be offensive to the bylaw is 20 centimeters, so it's already a pretty high. Your grass has to be pretty high before you're contrary to the bylaw.
I'm not sure there are many people following that. Maybe there are. Maybe there'll be a lot of, say, goats have been busy.
So if there's no further questions on the unsightly property, and happy to answer any, the next one that's before you is the vacant property bylaw. And this, kind of to your earlier question, Your Worship, is an idea that came from the community of Cornwall in Ontario, the city of Cornwall, Ontario. So the question had been asked us about what can we do with vacant properties and to explore the concept of potentially a vacant property tax, as is done in, there's a vacant property tax, I believe, in the city of Vancouver in British Columbia. And in kind of assessing that, the bylaw that's in front of you goes a slightly different route. So rather than establishing a tax, it establishes a permit. Under the Municipal Government Act, Council does have the authority to set tax rate groups and to establish those, but it's ultimately the provincial government who enforces property taxes and things like that. They don't have a tax rate group for vacant properties, and it was felt that you would be outside potentially the provincial regulations to set it up in that way. The Municipal Government Act does more clearly, though, give council to establish a permitting regime for things and to have rules around property maintenance and things of that nature. So this, again, was more consistent with that City of Ontario to establish a vacant property permit.
Well, explain that permit process. What would it?
Yeah, so under the bylaw that's before you, do you guys have that in front of you?
Yes. What item number, what number is it?
It's on the screen.
So, well, I guess I can just give kind of a high-level overview. So the idea is it defines a vacant building as one that has been vacant for 60 days. There are exemptions. Section 12 provides a number of exemptions, so it's not considered a vacant property if they've got a demolition permit, if they plan to demolish it. If it's occupied by the owner on a seasonal basis, so we're not trying to catch seasonal residents here. And if it's farm property, other than a dwelling, so if it's a barn or something like that on a farm, it also exempts a vacant building which is owned by the city. Other than that, vacant properties, which could be either...
Just in regards to that vacant building owned by the city, that's pretty general. But you could have a vacant building, let's hope we haven't, owned by the city that's unsightly and unsafe.
Right, so the idea is that you don't need to get a permit from yourself to have a vacant property. Like I'm not saying the city has any vacant properties, but the idea is that you're exempt, the city is exempt from the requirement to get a permit.
Is that fair?
It's a good question, Your Worship. I mean, you'd be asking yourself for a permit, so, you'd be deciding, you'd be the judge in your own case in some sense. But more generally, the idea is that an owner of a vacant building would be required to apply to get a permit. The way that it was set up in the Ontario case is that the permit would last for 4 years, and the permit fee would all be paid up front. Before they got the permit, there would have to be an inspection to ensure that the property is safe, and then there would be similar rules that already exist in the current dangerous, hazardous, unsightly premises bylaw for securing a property, such as the requirement for boarding up and things of that nature.
Cost for the permit?
So the cost for the permit is a great question. At the schedule to the bylaw, Schedule D, sets out some proposed costs. These are the exact figures that were used by the town of Cornwall in Ontario. So the cost for the 4-year permit was $2,485. Now, again, the cost of a permit, that's something that is entirely within council's discretion. It could be less or more. One of the other things that the Municipal Government Act permits council to do is to establish different permit fees for residents versus non-residents. or as well a business that operates as a place of business within the city or one who doesn't. So that is another option that council could consider, either raising or lowering the permit fee or establishing different permit fees for residents and resident businesses.
Ian, the 60 days, I know we're talking about unsightly or vacant, vacant, right?
Right.
Like 60 days doesn't seem like a long time. You know, there could be lots of places that are vacant for 60 days. I'm just not, so you're saying they have to apply before the 60 days for a permit so they can be vacant, or?
Yeah, so the 60 days is again the time frame that was used in Ontario, but that is up for debate and for changing. The other concept is, I mentioned that the permitting fee, if, let's say, in year 1 or year 2, you find a tenant and you're no longer a vacant unit, then you can recoup that you get part of the money back. The idea is that you pay the permitting fee up front, but that it would come back to you on a prorated basis in the event that you found. If I understand where council was coming from in kind of requesting some options in this area, is that vacant properties can be a problem, and it might be worthwhile to incentivize those who are holding on to vacant properties to either rent them at a rate that the market can bear or sell them to someone who might wish to develop or use the property.
The reason I raise that, I just don't think the problem we're having is 60 days old. Our problem is a couple of 2, 3, 4 years old. So that's the only reason I raised it.
What I was thinking when you said that is like, so, but there's seasonal usage as well, so then that's not considered vacant, or anyone going away for 3 or 4 months for the winter, that's not considered vacant. So just actual vacant buildings, I think, is what, yeah.
How up to date, I wonder, is this Cornwall one? I'm wondering, did you do any research or any convictions or not guilties for some of their cases, or how did they get into that?
Another good question, Your Worship. I believe the bylaw was about 10 years old. I had reached out to their department because I had some similar questions, and I haven't received a response. So part of my research was to figure out, how is this working for you guys? And if you could make a change at the staff level, what sorts of things would you do? I don't have a good answer for you on that.
And just for council's information, on the screen there is section 11. Just, I guess, where this discussion is going is, what if a particular property owner decides not to obtain a permit, vacant property permit, and these are the offenses or the fines or penalties that would be applicable in that case.
And I will say, the ones that we've drafted in there are quite strict. The fines are quite high. Part of the rationale for that, I always think of a number of years ago in the city of Charlottetown, if you parked at a parking meter, you could spend $15 in a day filling the meter, or there was a ticket that was a $5 ticket. So lots of people would just get the $5 parking ticket rather than pay the meter. So one of the reasons when you're establishing a fine is, again, when you're talking about incentives, the fine has to be enough that someone says, oh, it doesn't really make sense to contravene the bylaw, I might as well just get my permit. So the fees up there are high. Once again, it is entirely within the discretion of council in terms of enacting a bylaw to change those, but those are suggested fines on the basis that they make it quite clear to vacant property owners they might as well get a permit.
So you have to get a conviction before you can get the fine?
That is true, Your Worship. And there are provisions in the bylaw with respect to evidentiary provisions and things of that nature to assist in that, but you're correct. It would still be a high burden of proof.
So where would the money go from the fine?
That's a good question. I actually don't know what the city's.
Municipality or to an association of the province, or where?
It's my understanding it comes to the city, Your Worship, but I actually don't know into which account or what purpose it's put.
The same with the building permit fee, or not building, but the permit fee.
Oh, sorry, yeah, so the permit fee would come to the city.
So if they won't get a permit, then what?
So, yeah, so that's what the offense provisions are in there, so there would be the possibility of a proceeding in provincial court.
Thank you. Continue on.
If anybody else had anything? No? Okay.
Okay.
So, just based on what we're hearing from council, not hearing any major concerns with the content of what's being proposed. So if there are none, we'd like to, I guess, have some direction from council. Do you want to take this forward to the monthly council meeting for endorsement? Or these consideration to be approved at that meeting? And
The only thing that I can't speak for the deputy mayor and Councillor Drawn that are also on the committee, and your worship as well, but is the part regarding the city being exempt. I just think it should be the same as, we should be held accountable
I agree.
the same as everybody else, so if that part can be just taken out, I guess. If it's not there, then it's assumed.
'Cause we just
I would
put-
assume if it's not indicated we're exempt, then we're,
It's that example.
yeah, yeah.
So we had a situation last year or the year before when the city owned the properties on Summer and Water, purchased them, you know, they eventually got demolished, but we were after them because it was unsightly, but then when the city owned them, there we were with unsightly property buildings that we owned. But we eventually got it sorted out, but I agree that, I think we should make sure that we follow.
But I think if I can just make a point to that, your worship and fellow councillors, is that that's exactly, I think we spent so much oxygen trying to debate on this bylaw. The fact of the matter is, we had those properties on Summer Street, Summer and Water, and because we owned them, I think people thought, well, why are you doing that? But yet again, on the other hand, people were upset because they were vacant and derelict and unsightly.
Right.
So you're kind of in a situation where you're trying to address the problem, but until you're into that problem, sometimes you have to do those things. And that's what I think this bylaw will help us cover.
And if there are any further proposed amendments from the committee, certainly before it gets before council, I'm happy to make those and to speak at first reading as well.
Did the city of Cornwall, were they exempt themselves, or is that why? the city-
They were, your worship, yeah, that's, again, a lot of the provisions that are in there, I copied from this existing bylaw, yeah.
And they probably came up with that because they ran into situations that were just as frustrating as what we run into.
Possibly, yeah.
I don't have any further questions, Madam Chair. Unless-
Okay. Thank you very much.
Unless you have some more explanations.
I'm happy to answer any questions you have, your worship.
We appreciate your efforts in trying to help us get through this.
Thanks, Ian.
I hope you'll get that phone call when you made the call to see what their comments were, their rationale.
Indeed, yeah, I can follow up on that as well.
Do you have anything further, Councillor Adams? Would you adjourn your meeting? We'll start the next one. Okay. Okay, who's on next? Who's on first? 1 second. Councillor Drawn, the floor is yours, the Chair of Technical Services.
All right, thank you very much, your worship. One of my vice chairs is out, but I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a mover, your worship, and seconded by Councillor Adams. A couple items on the agenda this evening. I guess I'll just get right into the first one, which is tender came back for the storm sewer project 2022. informally known as the ditch infill project. So I will, guess I'll start things off just by reading the memorandum, the Tech Services memorandum from Gary McGinnis of Tech Services to Director Aaron McDonald regarding the Storm Sewer Project 2022. Tenders for the Storm Sewer Project 2022 were open on April 19th, 2022 at 1 o'clock p.m. This tender includes the installation of storm sewer on sections of Bay Avenue, Haley Drive, Glen Drive, and Murphy Street, and street widening on the north side of Glen Drive, and a short section of Murphy Street, north and south sides, and sidewalk on the north side of Glen Drive, with curbing on the north and south sides of a section of Murphy Street. Is that clear or what? Everybody's got
What was
that
the third
geography in their head?
What was the third one there?
Third one was curbing on the north and south sides of a section of Murphy Street. And the tenders came back, and amounts are as follows. Two bidders, one was AJL Limited in the amount of $929,514.40, and an 11.8 week schedule. And the second bid was Kernan Briggs Limited in the amount of $953,104.81 and a 13.8 week schedule. Staff have reviewed all unit prices and amounts have been verified. It's staff's recommendation that the Storm Sewer Project 2022 be awarded to the low bidder, AJL Limited, in the amount of $929,514.40, including 15% HST, up to the budgeted amount, which was $741,000. Staff recommends reducing the work to meet the current city budget, which of course we do, all the time with curbing and paving. If the tender comes in over budget, typically we will approve to do the work only up to the budgeted amount. So the total tender, which was $929,517.40, minus an HST rebate of $40,413.80, works out to be a total of $889,103.60. And there was some recommendations of how to handle the work now that we're only going up to that amount, and I might let either Director Aaron or CAO Rob speak to that, but staff recommended deleting the east side of Haley Drive to meet our 2022 budget. Completing Haley West Side and all the other street areas would be a total cost of $740,408, and that meets the current city budgets. So I know there was some discussions within Tech Services Committee and even with a couple of the ward councillors, just on how we're most appropriately to handle that as far as what's available to us, what's in the budget. I don't think there's any desire whatsoever to award the full amount. I think council would agree that we only want to spend what's in the budget, and I'll just let CAO Rob or Aaron speak to how we do that. I know in previous tenders, such as paving and whatnot, we just, Tech Services would work it out, but we're here now, so we can chat.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess the purpose of bringing this here to council tonight, as Councillor Duran has mentioned, is that when we went out to tender, it came back over budget, and excuse me, what we wanted to do simply tonight was just to close the loop with council that we intend to spend just up to the budget amount, and we do have 3 locations that will be done this year, which are Haley, Bay Avenue, and Murphy. We still have some technical details to work out around it, but essentially we just wanted to be able to bring this to council tonight, just to close the loop, say that we are going to be spending just the budget, and we want to proceed to award to AJL Limited.
I think that was pretty well decided too in budget discussions, that would be the limit.
No, Aaron?
Can I?
Of course,
Yeah?
Go ahead, Councillor.
I thought our budget for ditch infill was $500,000. And then Bruce has something in there for $165 to fill a ditch. So then it went up to 665. How did we get to 771?
741?
741, yeah,
There was,
whatever.
there was a separate line item for Murphy Street? Yeah, so we basically we lumped budget items together that involved fill and pipe work together. We're not probably gonna get a contractor to bid a $40,000 item. I can break down what each one of the items are. Haley Drive involves, I'll say, a typical infill the ditches and adding pipe. Bay Avenue is the same, infill the ditches and add pipe. Glen Drive was infill one side of the ditch, or one side of the road and ditch, and in that case, add a sidewalk. And Murphy Street was on the curbing. It's at the top, Murphy's really at the top of Bay, and it was to widen the street where the street is narrow and the cars were, the complaint was the car, and I shouldn't say cars, service vehicles or cars or plows are turning and driving on the front lawn, and the request was to widen and curb it. And that was a separate line item that was approved in the budget, so we put those 4 items together to give us that total.
So in
We
the
just picked the
budget,
line
they,
items.
in the
So
budget, they
now the
were all
bud-
separate, but to tender them, you put them together for better pricing.
Correct.
Well, so it's all considered ditch infill, though, 741,000.
No.
I'm not saying it's, I just said I picked 4 approved budget items, put them in one tender so we could get a better competitive price.
But the ditches were being filled, and then so we decided to put some pipe in there? Is that what you're saying? Like, I don't know, what came first, the chicken or the egg, I guess?
Haley and Bailey, Haley and Bay, as well as Glen, are all have open ditch right now that are being infilled on Bay or in Glen.
Right.
It's being infilled to allow a sidewalk. Murphy Street, the ditches are already filled, but in order for it to be curbed, the street had to be widened and put the curbing in. And there's a little bit of pipe at the end that we're gonna have to put in because the water's gonna run along this new curb to direct into, so it's a very, probably one crossing of pipe and a catch basin but the ditches are already filled on Murphy.
So Aaron, I guess what I'm saying to you, if we weren't filling these ditches, would we be putting these pipes in? Like, so one has to come first, and I guess I just wonder what, you know what I mean?
No, I'll try and answer your question, but we weren't filling the ditches. I'm not certain of your question.
So if we weren't filling these ditches, we wouldn't be putting the pipes in that you're talking about, or the,
That's the infill program. The infill program is to put pipes in and fill the ditch in.
right,
That's
but
the-
so that's what I
yeah.
mean, it's always been part of it, it's nothing new.
Nope.
Just wait, Bruce.
Yep.
No, I'm talking to Aaron, it's okay.
Yep.
Because this is a lot of money. And I'd like Aaron to answer me. No, Bruce, I'm asking Aaron. Thank you, Aaron. So,
Ask me what you want.
well, I guess that's the question. If we weren't filling these ditches, would we be putting these pipes in there, or are the pipes going in there because the ditches are going in?
The pipes go in to replace the existing ditch system to carry the water.
So it's the pipes are going in for the ditches?
Yes.
Okay,
I think
so
that's
it's
your
not a
question.
separate program. I felt like it was, so I guess that's why I wonder how it went from 665 to 741.
The addition of the Bay Avenue project, the Bay Avenue project had I don't know, we had $45,000 in the budget for Bay Avenue. We had 4 different line items in the budget.
Okay,
Whether you guys call them ditch infill or filling a ditch to put a sidewalk or adding curbing, if they had a similar scope of work, we put them with the same contractor to try and you guys can argue,
Right.
2 of them are infill and one's infill to put a sidewalk and the 4th one is to put a curb on. You guys can call it what you want.
Yeah.
I'm not getting into that.
no, I just want to know what it is as a counselor. Like, if it's ditch infill, that's one thing. If it's curbing, that's another. If it's, what brought the price up almost $100,000. So I have a right to know where that,
Yep.
where that came from.
We priced and increased our prices, and last year's tender on infill, I think, come in on budget or slightly below, and we only put a slight increase. last year, other projects had quite a substantial increase in prices, but not on the infill job. So we didn't increase it as much as the other tenders. And it did incur probably a 20%. The other storm job that we put in on Glover Shore had a drastic increase, but it had been 2 years before because it was put in with a funding program, the budget. So pipe projects went up 20% at least this year, as far as why the prices are
I know,
high.
but we were just at an announcement where there was some money for that too with the federal government, the provincial government, so I'm wondering where that money's coming from. I guess I just feel like it's a lot more money than we had put in the budget. And I understand what you're saying.
That's why we're suggesting we just spend the 4 budget amount numbers and we cut the scope of the work down to match that budget number, totaling up the 4 budget line items.
So there's nothing
One of them
added
may
to the
not
budget.
have been, or 2 of them may not have been, what you guys are terming ditch and fill. If they required inputting fill and widening or curbing and pipe, we put them in the same scope of a tender.
Right. Okay.
So my question was gonna be, and I guess you just answered it, the prices I know are increasing, everything is going up left, right, and center. Did you say that this year it's around 20% more than last year for the prices?
That's what we've seen on the pipe projects, yes. 20 to 25%, yeah.
And what was last year, you mentioned?
An additional 20% or so. 20,
We're looking at the last couple of years, a big percentage.
yep, 40 to 50% total. And it's not all to blame on we can't blame all on the contractor. We've talked to the suppliers of the pipe and said, how much have you put up on the pipe? Then we've talked to the contractor and said, how much increase have you put on wages and all the wages? And then we went to each one, we all know what the fuel prices are, so we said the main inputs are labor, the pipe, and then we also talked to the suppliers of the pipe and said, well, how much is, another one that they brought up to us was the actual transport. There's my cost of pipe in my plant, it's now costing me 30% more to transport it to Moncton, St. John, or PEI, right? So we asked to identify what percentages, so we can't say it's all just profit for the end person putting it in. Each one said, there's our increases.
Yeah, I'm done, but I just want to say as a resident of Summerside, and I'm sure many are very disappointed that we're spending $741,000 on filling ditches.
Just
The
so I'm clear
only-
on that, though, I don't think,
The only
there's no
ditch-
additional,
There's
sorry.
the only ditches being filled are on Haley, and not all are being done that were first going to be done because of the tender increase that came in. So only one side of Haley is being done. The other part was curbing, and the other part has to be filled because of sidewalk. So really, it's only mine that is a complete, really, it's only mine that is a complete ditch and bay, and
And to be fair.
half of mine has disappeared because we have agreed to stay within budget.
Okay, that's what my question was.
And just to be fair, or just, to explain to the, Councillor Ramsey, I know you've said all along that your main opposition is cosmetic ditch filling, whereas a fairly high percentage of this is not cosmetic. It's the curb and the, but for this particular, I guess, tender recommendation, it's some curbing and some street widening, which is not.
And that's added in, that 500,000 is for ditching.
Yes, but we're not spending 741,000 on cosmetic
I don't
ditching.
think there's been anything added in.
So
since-
if you're considering we're only doing the west side, correct, of Haley? We're only, to stay within budget, we're only going to do the west side, so if what,
360.
so what people, that's the budget, and the cost per side is 262,039, so really, if what you're saying is cosmetic, it's only 262, it's not 500 or more.
Imagine, 262,000 cosmetic.
But to make it
ditching.
clear, I think it
Anyway,
should be clear that
we should
Think
be-
from what
facelifts
you're
cost
saying,
too, twice as
sorry,
much.
Mr. CEO, but there's nothing added since the budget, is that correct? Nothing other than what was in the budget. So I think that should be clear to the people that.
Simply an opportunity to bring different tenders together to try to get the best possible price.
But still 500,000 for ditching. That's the key. That was your priority, Bruce.
I think it was voted,
Anybody
No, I
vote
didn't
nay on the budget?
I did not vote.
I think it was
I
voted
did not
upon.
vote.
Folks, you know, it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really
One-
hard.
one at a time.
When we're trying to listen to what everybody is saying and everybody's talking together. So can we please just take turns? Because I'm really trying to listen to what everybody has to say.
Say what
And,
have
you
to
know,
say,
like,
Mark.
it's fine if people do kind of have a consensus and they agree. But if there's one or two or three counselors that maybe have a differing an opinion, we shouldn't be shutting them down. And I think that's what Councillor Barb is trying to do. And I think we need to listen.
I don't think anybody's shutting anybody down.
Well,
I
I
think we want
do.
to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to speak. And I see you still have your light on, oh, you're the chair.
I'm just trying to run the meeting.
Let me rephrase that. We're not trying to shut Councillor Barb down, but she has a different opinion, and I think the rest of us are trying to listen. We want to be fair. We want to hear what everybody is saying, but it's almost like there's, you know, a few people that are just, they're going right after it, and they're trying to say that it's one thing and it's in the budget. Another councillor is saying it's cosmetic, and it's really hard for us that are trying to look down the middle here and you know, hear what's being said.
The important thing is that we're not going over budget. I think that's what the chair is trying to get explained out there.
Yeah, no, and I think just because of the subject matter, I mean, we deal with this every spring on sidewalks and paving and, you know, and if something comes in under budget, it's pretty quick, you know, great, we'll do up to the budget amount, but when it comes to projects like this, there's a bit more debate, and there should be, and that's fine, but we are where we are, and tenders came in, and I think we all can agree that the budget was unanimously approved, and I think we should carry on with the evening.
Were these tenders awarded?
They'll be probably, I'm
The
assuming.
tender
they'll be
was
awarded.
closed, since it was over the budget amount, it needed to come to council, which we were here this evening for, so it's come to, I guess this is
May 16th is the monthly.
this is a committee meeting that would make a recommendation, then that it goes to the next available council meeting, and so that we can award it. It has not been awarded.
I don't think there's any support to go over budget.
No, I mean,
It's pretty clear.
I move that we take it to the council meeting on Monday, the 16th, up to the budgeted amount, and I mean,
Can I just ask one question then, Councillor Duran?
but it's just a committee meeting now. Council can't really give direction at a committee meeting. Okay.
But I just want to just double check, when you say that, like the over budget amount, the 148, 130, is that what has brought the costing up? Is because of the cost for the pipes and the cost for fuel? Is that what has brought it up?
The cost of pipe supply, the cost of transporting the pipe here, the cost of labor to install it, and the cost of fuel have been the four major factors. And in order to meet the budget, we gave options of how we looked at which one could we cut something of this and actually still get it done, or where could you end that with it looking like you didn't end it, and that's where we came back with a recommendation. It was probably a factor of four things that add together, not just any one thing.
Floor is still yours,
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
no, I still have another item here, if we're okay to move on, if there's anything left, we're happy to. No, I guess I'm just used to, you know, passing the resolutions for awarding tenders at the monthly meetings, so.
I don't run and decide procedure.
Okay, so moving on, our next item is
Excuse me.
crossing guard at,
Thanks, Aaron.
crossing guard on South Drive. That's all that's there, but I expect that refers to just south of where Pope and so I know there was some media coverage on that, which we certainly don't need to cover the details on, but you know, a request came in to look at the possibility of reinstating a crossing guard across South Drive, just south of Pope, for students attending Greenfield, I think is what the objective was, and
Could be police services, could be tech services. Right. Crosses, or municipal services, it crosses over different departments.
I think crossing guard is maybe separate from crosswalk, but there is a crosswalk there already, but. So we can kind of cross swords here for a moment, and we'll step into police services. Yeah, no, so I'll hand it over to Chief Dave Poirier, and we'll carry on.
Yes.
I just found out that this was on the agenda a couple of days ago. So we had an officer on scene yesterday and this morning. Again, yesterday there was 5 children crossing, 3 on bikes and 2 on rollerblades, but the traffic did stop. But the kids weren't using the orange flags that were provided, so our officers made sure yesterday and today they were using the flag and walking their bikes across the street and not just rushing across. There was no problems with traffic stopping, and but South Drive is a kind of a thoroughfare, and it's a quite busy spot, and the officer found there wasn't hardly anybody using the automated lighting system that we put in. Kids were great to deal with. That's all I have for now, unless there's more questions about it.
I was just
Go
wondering,
ahead.
have we had any requests from the school from this, or the Home and School Association, or parents in general?
None through my office.
I received a call from, when the story was in the paper, I received a call from the Journal. I think it was Kristen Gardner, I believe. Anyway, I never had a call before, so when she did ask me about this, I made my comments, and then afterwards I contacted the Greenfield School. I talked to the assistant vice principal or whatever, and I wanted to know if there was any issues, and he said they thought they had a little bit of an issue, but it was addressed about a year or so ago. And I asked them to contact the Home and School and gave them my number and to ask them to call me, and I've never received I never received a complaint from anybody else. But in saying that, on Saturday morning, on my way to my walk around 7 o'clock, all the flags on the end of Derby, that's the Derby, the crosswalk right at Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte, I'm sorry. I said Derby. The one that has the red flags in it, all of them were, I shouldn't say all of them, but most of them were all over the road, and people were running over them, so I stopped and I put them all back. But now whether they were, the wind wouldn't have blown them out, but I would say just somebody threw them out. However, I did go down and I stopped there every morning for the last number, and I haven't seen too many crossing with the automated system. There hasn't been. I've seen a few, but not much. And up at the other side, I've seen them crossing, but they don't like using flags. So I was glad to hear that the police were there today to tell them to use the flags.
Yeah, and we told them too, when they're coming back in the afternoons, to bring it back across, and so they don't get lost, and a lot of places have them all on one side, which is not worth a darn.
Yeah. I wonder if, like, the school would be informed regarding the flags, and because I know at Elm Street, you guys went up and you explained to them, to the kids how to use the flag. You did a couple of little lessons a few mornings when we put the flags up there at Elm and Willow. And I'm just wondering, Bruce, if you're, if the principal or anybody has talked to the kids about using the flashing lights, or about, just a little bit of education on that.
I thought that the officers did that when they put them in there.
Well, I know you did at Elm Street,
Yeah.
and it was very helpful.
We did Greenfield as well.
And you
Yeah,
did it
I
at
thought so,
Greenfield
yeah.
as well.
So,
So
anyway,
I
just to-
wonder if even each year, because new kids come in and new little people, and, you know, if maybe that's something, and I know that's an extra thing for police services to have to worry about, but I'm wondering if that's something that the officers might be able to do, say, at the beginning of the year, each year, to
Sure.
go to, you know, a few of the different, especially with the little guys, and see if that
can do that.
helps. You know, that might help. Teach them about those little flags and.
Sorry, I just had another comment. It's funny, I got a couple of calls today. The crosswalk coming out of West Drive, a woman almost get hit there today. I got a call on that. And it's maybe somewhere, it's where you, if you're walking down West Drive, you come to south, that intersection where it veers that way, there's a little crossing that goes across to the island, and then you go across. Anyway, I think that it's a place that we need to look at to see if we put the flag system there too. And the other one is down at McGee Drive. I got a call on that. I believe Justin had a call too on that today. McGee Drive, and what happens there is the people on McGee Drive or Tupper, a lot of the kids will walk to the school when it's fine weather, but if they have to take the bus, they have to cross South Drive and pick it up on Valley Street. So it's just, I think we need to look at that intersection there. That may be, that we probably need a crosswalk there, and that's the flag system too. So it is a busy street, so.
McGee is one where there's no curb or nothing on, but so it'd be a crosswalk that we may have to, you know, build one of those little islands that we've done.
There's a sidewalk on McGee, so it could go straight in. I looked.
There is a sidewalk on McGee?
Yeah.
Okay. There wasn't on Google Maps today when I looked, so that must be one of the newer ones, okay.
It was just there. Very good.
Okay, so as far as crossing guard on South Drive, I guess we've sort of, you know, explored the short-term need anyway, and without doing a major study on it, I guess, you know, where we are is where we are. Police services had a presence there over the last, was it the last couple days that you had someone stationed there just to kind of supervise and
Yes,
see what was going on?
So we have 5 full-time crossing guards and 2 part-time ones. As heaven forbid, you know, when someone gets sick, we have to use the part-time people. Sometimes we have to use officers themselves to do the crossing, you know, for the kids. And even the part-time ones are kept busy.
Okay, well, we'll table that idea, I guess, for now, and it was certainly a valid discussion point to have, but, I mean, if, you know, there's not a whole lot of outcry publicly, I mean, do we, you know?
Just keep an eye on it.
Yeah, keep an eye on it, and, yeah, for sure. Keep it, and I like the idea of getting in touch with the school and education, for sure, September, yeah.
Councillor Drawn, there was just one other thing I'm not sure, I think I might have left a file in your desk there, but a gentleman was in to see me last week. He's got a new proposal for property on Meadow Heights, Mr. Galland. And I said it would have to go through a committee, so this is not, it was only in the last few days. But he's trying to build on a piece of property that he has sort of in an L-shaped area out back on Meadow Heights, so I guess, I'm not sure if there's an official application gone to tech services.
I'll have to
yet.
check.
Pardon?
I said, we'll check to see if an application's
Okay,
coming
do
in.
you have that followed up, and let's go through a process?
Yep.
Councillor Adams knows about it there, it's in her board.
Yep.
But he was in to see me, and he's got quite a bit of property there, and feels there's sufficient land for a building permit for a bungalow, and a garage maybe he wanted to put in. But anyway, I just might have left that file with the
Yeah, I got
survey
it.
in your desk.
I think in all fairness, we should wait till at least we have a tech services presence here and we can advertise it in the agenda. And I mean, at first glance, you know, if it complies with all our zoning, if it's a R1 or R2 with a R1 dwelling, I don't think it really has to come to council, but that doesn't mean we can't
Right.
add it to the
It'll
June
have to go
committee.
through a process, a committee process, and the staff will review it, and then come back to council to be dealt with.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to come to committee if it's allowed to be built there. If
It's a kind of an unusual situation, I guess I just leave it at that.
Which,
but
okay.
Until it gets processed. Sorry, Mr. CEO?
That's okay.
If it has to come to council, it will, as it goes through the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. That is everything for tech services. If there was anything anybody would like to add, we will be happy to entertain it. If not, I'll move for adjournment of tech services.
Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Adams and thirded by his worship.
Okay. And
That
we'll-
concludes the
Thank you.
tech services.
Thank you for that. And we'll continue on with Police, Fire, and Emergency Services. Councillor Ramsey, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I'll call this meeting to order. I'd just like approval of the agenda. Someone could approve that? Yep. Greg? Thank you, Greg. So I just have a couple of things that I just want to announce before I get into my meeting. Fire Services doesn't have anything on here, but I wanted to announce that they're bringing back summer nights this summer with the Ellis Family Band, and it's going to be August 13th. And the committee has been formed, and I just want to put a little shout out for them to, I think they got approved for 1,200 people to be able to attend this. So with the pandemic coming to an end, it's really nice to be able to plan this type of event. So anyway, just a little shout out for those guys and the work that they're putting into it. And so people can look forward to a nice evening out on August 13th. And the other thing I wanted to talk about for just a second was we're bringing back the Lobster Carnival Amateur Singing Contest, the country talent show. So that's going to happen on July 5th and 6th. And that's pretty exciting. Council has put a small committee together here, and we've been working on this diligently, and we're really looking forward to that happening on July 5th and 6th. It's going to extend our Lobster Carnival by 2 nights. So we'll go from 3 nights to 5 nights, which is really nice, and we're working on moving that even a little further down the road next year, Mayor Basil.
And also trying to juggle the race dates, too. We're trying to get word from the province and Atlantic Lottery and everybody else to try to get the Governor's Plate date. I guess that date has been set.
Yeah,
but,
that's the following weekend. Yeah.
Anyway, we thank the
So-
committee because a lot of work to get that contest, and it will be a big draw. And Bruce, are you doing a number there, you and Barb? No, I think
Yeah, we're doing a number, all right.
I think it's important for, just a note, I think it's important for everybody to know that we don't move our dates for our event.
Right.
Cavendish Beach moves theirs.
Right.
And our event, we are told by the Expedition Association that this is when we should have it, we should move it because it will interfere with other events, and we don't want to take away from any events on the island or our surrounding communities. But the same does not go for Cavendish Beach, so they take in whenever. So that's why, if anybody's wondering in the public why we are the same weekend as them, no, they are the same weekend as us.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Adams. And I guess I just want to say that it's just nice for pandemic coming to an end and activities are being planned, and it just seems like going to be a fun summer here in Summerside. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say on that. I'm going to get into, so I'm going to defer number 3 on this, on my agenda, no parking sign, Poplar and Elm Street. That was Councillor Snow, and he can't be here this evening, and I was just talking with him on text, and he'd prefer to be here to explain what his need is. So we'll put that on next month's meeting, if that's okay. Okay?
And Councillor Barb, I just wanted to mention to you, I had cleared it through you on your committee, that I had a couple, just
Yeah.
there's at the end.
Yes, at the end. I
Thank you.
certainly have you here, Norm. I'm not going to forget you. Thank you. And then the other thing, number 4, is Willow Avenue speed bump. So I'm getting a number of calls from folks, Chief Poirier, regarding Willow Avenue down by the racetrack and where Johnson's Farm is. That's how I'll explain it, so everybody will know where I'm talking about. But Johnson's Farm across the street, across Willow from the racetrack, I think the lady said they have about 9 horses there that they're renting stalls to, And those horses are back and forth across Willow, and the cars are coming up there very quickly, she said. And then with the, you know, the soccer fields and so much going on down there, she was wondering, you know, how are we going to solve this, Barb? So I just said I would take it here. And I know the speed hump that we put on Elm Street was very effective for the school zone with children and slowing the cars down. And so I'm not necessarily looking for a speed bump. I'm looking for a speed hump on Willow.
Isn't there one at Willow, the intersection?
It's way down though, Bruce. It's not up where the
Just east of the,
yeah.
The barns.
yeah, it's not down where the problem area is, where it's so busy and where they're coming out of the racetrack and the cup and, you know, that's where. So anyway, I'm requesting for that to be put there. I just think for safety of the animals, safety of the children, and yeah.
What's the difference between a hump and a bump?
Well, the hump's a little bigger, Mayor. Yeah, and really though, when we put the one on Elm Street, people have noticed that. They're like, holy, that's not a lump, that's a hump. But anyway, it does make a difference in when you go over it at a certain speed. People definitely slow down there,
Is it
so.
a permanent one or just for the summer?
They're
months?
permanent, no, and I think because the horses are back and forth all the time, daily, right, for training, for this and for
So
that,
it
and.
would have to be done for, snowplow wouldn't scoop it up the first.
Well, yeah, they didn't scoop the one up in Elm Street, you know, it worked out very well. If they know they're there, I think that.
So I just have one question for you. So, the other day when I was parked there at the Dome, and then the lady it happened to, she parked beside me and rolled down her window and said, "Did you just see that?" So, a horse came from the track, through the parking lot, across the road, and never as much as slowed down, looked both ways,
Really?
anything. So maybe we need education on the other side when it's like, you're at a road, they're
Yeah.
vehicles. So maybe we need,
Yeah.
he was in, no, it wasn't just a horse, it was like the guy.
Like on a buggy or
Yeah.
a cart,
So
yeah.
like maybe we need to educate them that they're actually crossing into vehicles and so
Right.
on. So maybe they
And
might want to.
I wonder, Councillor Adams, if like a sign, like, you know how you're driving and you see the horse signs or slow down for animals or whatever? Like maybe we could even consider doing a few things like that on that street. I mean, if it's busy like that
Because
and,
with the dome there now, traffic has increased a lot.
oh yeah,
So
it's busy,
they
so.
have to be mindful of cars
Yeah.
as well as cars being mindful of them.
Exactly, 100%, yeah. So would you think maybe, just talking about maybe putting even a couple of signs up regarding, like either way, that there's animals crossing and, you know?
Because there is some signage down there already denoting that it is I guess, a equine crossing,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
And just so you're aware, Councillor Ramsey, when this issue first came up a few years ago, it did come from the Johnson property,
yes,
and they kind of indicate where they wanted the hump or bump, and that's where we put it at the time,
Right.
so. I mean, we could certainly look at another one,
yeah,
know
well,
exactly where. but-
I'm just more worried about safety, Chief, you know, that's my thing, and so if, but where they come out, that hump is nowhere near where they come out their driveway.
Yeah.
The driveway is way down by almost the entryway into the racetrack parking lot, right? So if the hump's way up there, that's, yeah.
So that's
Anyway.
gonna be looked at, eh?
Yes, if we could just look at that, I would appreciate it, and,
So it would be nice to find out who the complainant was and meet with them and see exactly
we can do that.
where they would like to see it. and-
yep, I can make
Best
that
bang.
arrangement. Yep, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor
Just a question.
McFeely?
Yeah, I think, anything that can be done to slow traffic down on Willow in that area there, I think is, and it's gonna become more acute with the official
dome.
name is the Canada Games Dome.
Yeah,
The question I have is those temporary speed bumps that we have. I think we bought a couple more last year, and some of them we had placed in the construction zone up around
Beaton.
Beaton
Beaton.
and stuff. So, is there a plan on where those are going to be put in place for this year, the temporary ones?
trying to
Greg?
get Greg's attention here.
Because
Just
we
based
moved,
as-
like, I know we moved one of them from the lower end of Arcona where we had issues, and kind of borrowed that last year to put up in one
Right.
of the other places there, so. So my question is where, I don't know how many, I don't even know how many we have in the system now. We only used to have 2 or 3, but I think we bought a couple more.
Yep. Yeah, we've got a few more in our inventory now, but I guess, we're leaving it to municipal services to determine, I guess, the most appropriate placement of where those temporary bumps and humps can go this year.
We're certainly not gonna put them on Craig again. They keep stealing them.
Yeah, would we leave that to you, Greg, or would that be something you and the police might discuss to? Yeah, that's what I thought, okay.
Well, I
All
would
right.
put
Yeah,
my
he's talking
my
about
oar in the
temporary
water, I
ones.
guess, for about the lower end of Arcona again there, where it was prior to what I thought was a temporary move last year because of construction.
And I guess that's what I wanted to say as well. I don't know, CAO, if you or whomever is keeping track, there has been some requests come in for speed bumps and humps. And I'm very mindful of the fact, just as Councillor Bryan has pointed out, residents around the city have asked, and sometimes they wonder why they get placed and theirs aren't. So I think we really need to keep track of the fact that there are people who have asked that are kind of maybe feeling a bit ignored, such as Lower Arcona. Thanks.
So to follow up on Councilor Peavy's question, how
But-
many humps do we have? There's no such thing as a hump and a half. We either got
That's what, no, that's a bump and a half is a hump.
It's certainly hard to keep everyone happy because sometimes you put the bump or the hump down, somebody else doesn't like it in the wrong place, so.
Yeah. You know what, Chief, in all fairness, in the whole time I've been a counselor, I have never heard a complaint about anything safety-wise that we've done regarding slowing people down and using, four-way stops, and I know we did some of that in the beginning, like I just haven't. No one saying, oh, that's too safe, Barb. Never heard that yet.
No.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. Anyway, so if that's, we'll just look at that and see, and I'll try and set that meeting up, Chief, okay? And so then the next item on the agenda is a bylaw officer. And of course, I put that on there because I guess, we've been talking about this for a long time. We get so far down the road and then everything falls apart every time. We did end up having one gentleman hired. He got sick shortly after he was hired and went off on sick leave and never did come back. And then, of course, we had a few times that we looked like we had something lined up, and then that fell through. And then I think at one point, Gord, it was something that we thought we'd even put through HR, and that you would work with police services and try to get someone on board. And I don't know how many applicants we had for that, but that was also something that wasn't successful. So I guess my question is where are we now, because it's May, and what does that look like for the summer? I guess I want our residents to know that we've been working hard on it. It's not like it's ever gotten forgotten.
Yep.
So I just wonder where that is. And
Yeah, and maybe
Thank you.
what I'd like to do is, I don't like to answer a question with a question, but is maybe to seek some direction from council on that, because a couple of things. We do have a bylaw complaint process that, from all accounts, seems to be working fairly well. We do get complaints come in through the CAO and the mayor's office, and they're followed up on and addressed promptly. The other piece is, earlier this evening, we had a discussion with council around the unsightly premises, I guess, proposed revisions to that bylaw, plus a vacant properties bylaw. And I think there are some tools now that within those particular two bylaws that if council does enact them, I guess the question then becomes, is there still a need for a bylaw enforcement officer? And I guess that's the policy question that we need some direction from council on.
okay, so can I just speak on that for a moment? So every time we have a complaint, we have to use one of our officers. Right now, we had to take our SRO out of the school. I'm not sure if council is aware of that. That's just happening as we kind of speak. We're hoping we can get them to go up there at different times throughout the day, or chief has, their office has agreed to, you know, keep as much presence there as possible. But right now, staff is short. I don't know that every time an officer's called. I had a complaint for an officer last week. Well, that officer had to go down and deal with the complaint, and then guess what? Had to call me again because she had to go down and deal with it again. And I'm like, you know what? I know our officers could be doing much more important work than dealing with some of these smaller issues. So, and I know that there's money in the budget for a commissioner or bylaw officer, whatever we want to call that person. So I just think if the money's there and we can find someone, that is going to be our best bet, at least for the summer months when we do get the number of calls. And it is nice that, you know, policy and procedures are changing regarding our bylaw. Yeah, that's really good. Everything we can do to move forward on that is good. And I always think it's handled, because Summerside Police Services are so efficient that you always handle everything. But that's the problem. Like, there's just too much. And I think that if the money's in the budget to have a bylaw officer, then we really should work hard to get one in place. Like I say, even if it's for 5 or 6 months, I don't know. But certainly the busy time for bylaw, you know, requests. So that's my feeling on it.
So the school officer goes back to the police department in summer months?
Well, no, he's leaving early, Basil, because police services are just so busy. So we've had to take him out of the school, and just for, you know, but he's going to keep in touch, and we're going to do everything we can. But that's a big change, and so that just tells you what's happening, you know, that you guys are so busy. And I just think we're doing a disservice if we have the money for someone to be in place and that we don't have them in place, and that we're using very, very important services of police to deal with these smaller issues.
Certainly, Councillor, I mean, we certainly didn't give up. I mean, the latest one, we had an officer who couldn't work the streets anymore, so we tried to give him an accommodated position doing this, and then he left, so it didn't work out.
I know, unbelievable. I know we've had so many different situations where we almost had someone, you know, but I wonder if we put it out with HR again, let maybe our team here run it again and see if we can, you know, go through that process. That may work. Just because it doesn't work once, that doesn't mean we don't continue to try that process, you know, that might.
And I think part of the issue is Gordon still here? Like, Gordon will, can confirm it, but there's not a lot of applications coming in for, like, work in general, like where you're finding positions in just not bylaw officer, just regular policing hard to fill, right? So
including crossing guards.
exactly. So there you go. So it's and you know, we put money in the budget for extra police officers, like, but where do you get them from if there's none, right?
Right.
So that's
Oh, for sure. So, and I agree, Councillor Adams. I'm just saying that just because we try it once and it doesn't work, doesn't mean, because there might be that person out there that would love to come and work for Summerside Police Services for 6 months. You know, we just might hit it this time just because it didn't work before. So I'd just like to see maybe us run that again, and.
Well, I'll take my direction from the gentleman on my right here.
Okay.
Discuss it.
I guess maybe if council agrees with, maybe that's something we would like to do.
I always thought that they were trying to get somebody. Has anything changed? We've been trying to get a bylaw officer, but we haven't been successful, so I don't know
Just keep
why we
trying,
need direction if
Should we be trying to get our regular complement up to where it is and those additional positions, and then
I think they
go
are, though. eh?
at this?
I think they're trying.
We're
Yeah.
trying.
Yeah.
Trying, yeah,
Yeah.
they're trying.
But
This is a lower position, so it might not be
Yeah,
as
but I know
difficult
of
to.
at least 4 scenarios that we tried to get people into it, and it didn't work for whatever reason, and that's the problem, right? It's not for lack of trying, it's just
No.
nothing has come to
Right.
fruition with it, so.
So, you know, that's my whole thing. Could we run it again and just see what happens, you know?
Can I just ask, Dave, do you need a bylaw officer? Or do you need extra bodies that will encompass bylaw work some as well?
No, but people are gonna have to be patient when a bylaw comes in or bylaw complaints, long grass. It's not a big priority right now.
Nope.
You know, long grass, I mean, sure, there's issues where there's mice and rats and everything else, but we eventually will get to it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it would be nice to have one, but it's just hard to get.
Yep.
And
So if you had your full complement and everybody was doing it when there was no emergencies and other more important police work, obviously, then could the full complement cover the work of the bylaws?
yeah, we're doing it now, and
Yeah.
like Councilor Ramsey mentioned, and, you know, it's May to September, you know, there's nothing in the winter really that goes on.
Yeah, that's
but
what I mean. It's-
bylaws.
Yeah.
Infraction.
Extremely busy. They're extremely busy. Yeah. So, Gordon McFarland, did you have something that you wanted to say? You want to go up to the mic, please, and give your name?
Council a number of times. The chief has told us a number of times that his priorities are policing resources, and that if there's $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 you want to put in the budget for bylaw enforcement, that he's told us on numerous occasions that he would prefer it be in policing resources to hire more part-time police officers. I know the chief has mentioned a number of times that when they get the complaints, that it's not the top of the priority, but even with that, the complaints still get dealt with within 24 or 48 hours. Like the first contact from time of complaint coming into the CAO to the chief to back to investigate the issue is almost always within 48 hours. We've talked to you before about the issues that we have run in dealing with, not issues, challenges that we've run into dealing with the union on whether bylaw enforcement work would be bargaining unit or non-bargaining unit. We did advertise for a person last year. We had very few applicants, and we weren't successful in being able to hire someone. We did have a staff member who was constable, we were trying to work through an accommodation with, and because we were in that position of trying to find a suitable accommodated position for the officer, the union was very gracious and worked closely with us trying to make that work, and then that person ended up getting a different job and left our employment. So there's really nothing new on the file. Senior management, I think, have been clear to say that bylaw enforcement officer standalone is not a priority, but we've taken direction from council. We tried to hire someone last year and we weren't successful.
Yeah, and I think that's it, Gordon, is that just because it wasn't successful last year, you know, again, doesn't mean wouldn't be successful this year. And there is money. There's money for commissionaire we haven't had a commissionaire in Summerside for almost 2 years, right? So there is money. It's separate money from a police officer. And I really think we are doing disservice if we say that Summerside Police Services can look after the bylaw stuff without it being a hindrance to other very important work that they do on a daily basis. So I'm just trying to, the money's there. I think we should put it where we could, if we can get an officer, and just let our officers do the work, the very important work that they have to do for our residents. That's my feeling on it, and it has been from the get-go. I'm not, you know.
One of those challenges, and we've said it to council numerous times, the work of the police constable is still going to be almost entirely the same on a bylaw complaint file, other than the very first contact. So a bylaw officer would presumably make the very first contact with a resident on the complaint, but after that, if the file wasn't resolved immediately, then the constable would have to be involved in the file. So
Right.
in fairness, we haven't, our analysis is that there's not going to be a great amount of, a lessening of work for the for the police.
Well, I think, Gordon, we talked about that at length as well, where usually when someone goes to your door and they're dressed in a uniform, the bylaw's pretty much looked after. Not very many times do you have, that you would have to go to police services to, if even when we had that lady in from Charlottetown, when she said she went with a uniform on, the job was done. She didn't have to go back time and time again. She went, and then she went back to make sure that it was done. And, in most cases, police aren't involved. So, anyway, I mean, I'm just, saying the same old story. But I just think it's important for Summerside. I think it would be something that would probably benefit the city for the summer months. So
management is going to be looking at the situation and considering it, and if you got recommendations to come to council, just let us know.
We'll continue to consider it. If council wants us to, we'll post a position again and see what interest is out there. But again, we'll try to maximize whatever opportunities we can to fill the position.
So I would like to see it run. I would like to see you run the ad again as chair, please.
So if council is good with that?
So what's the feeling among councillors?
What do you think?
They want to run an ad, or they want to leave it to management? We've got to,
Well, it's been 3 years later. We got to do something.
Pardon?
I thought we were still continuing to try, but
Right.
we work within the department. Anyway, that's,
But it's every 3 months, Bruce, I ask the same question. So, I mean, I guess we need some direction to say, let's go after it again. That's why I put it on the agenda tonight.
But I think if we, look, again, I'm trying to be very fair and listen to everybody, but I think if the posting has been put in the paper and nobody has applied, or the original ones, maybe it didn't work out or whatever, I just keep wondering if it's like a 3 to 6 month position, and I'm not opposed one way or the other, but if the interest is not out there, maybe our approach is a little bit different. And I'm saying this with respect to you, Councillor Barb, like, I know you're very passionate about it, but it seems like when it comes up every, number of months or whatever, we're still at an impasse. And I think this needs to be something at the committee level that you folks are talking, because council is being brought into it, but we don't have anything definitive to decide on. So if the committee and HR or whatever could talk about it and bring it back, but if nobody is applying or showing interest.
But that's a year ago, Norma. It hasn't been posted for a year.
But there must be some reason why people are not.
Well, they're not applying for lots of jobs. That's what I'm saying.
So maybe there's no
right?
interest.
Well, but maybe that's what I'm saying. It may happen if they run it once more. You might get that right person. Well, you just can't give up and not try at all. I guess that's my thing.
But I don't want to belabor it, because I think we've talked quite a bit on it, but it's like, if it's a 3 to 6 month position, maybe people are looking at that in terms of, I'd much rather look for something full-time.
Yeah, it's not 3 to 6. We talk 6 or a year.
Well,
so.
I'm not on the committee, but I mean,
Yeah.
just
Well,
from
I
observation.
did say that earlier.
Chief, you got light on the, speak again?
Yeah, keep in mind, this is a thankless job, especially dealing with parking issues. The ones we've had in the past, I mean, they get crapped on every day, and over something minor, and it's a thankless job, and not everybody wants it, and not everybody's billed for it.
No, that's for sure. But it's like any job, right? We all do better at certain things, so, yeah. So if that's it, I guess, we'll just adjourn this meeting if no one else has any.
I think Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring it into her right now. And I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Mayor McCollman. She has a few things. You're welcome.
I didn't really have anything on committee tonight, but we wanted to acknowledge, a senior resident has hand-knit Ukrainian scarves for children and brought them into the city as a donation to make sure that the families that are coming, the children receive them. And I've asked for her permission. We just want to acknowledge the fact that she made the scarves for any young person coming in. She had a very heavy burden for displaced children that are coming in. She said her heart was breaking in those circumstances. And she said it's a small reminder to them to always remember and be proud of their mother country, because she did it in the colors of the Ukrainian flag. And she's just very appreciative. She's a senior lady, and with her permission, it's Arlene Cameron. And she said her hands aren't as fast as they used to be, but that was her contribution. So we want to thank Arlene on behalf of the city.
She has a number of the scarves, right?
Yes,
She
she
had
didn't
one
do a
bag.
big number, but there was there's a bag of them
Yeah, right there.
right here. So
Yeah.
she just wanted to make sure that they were left in the city's care, so that when the families come in, they do receive them, the children. So thank you to Arlene. And then the second thing, very quickly, you may notice that Councillor Carey, Councillor Barber, and myself are wearing Vote for Women. And I received this information from the Museum and Heritage, Prince Edward Island. Today, Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022, is the 100th anniversary of some women on PEI winning the right to vote in provincial elections. And this is an important day of reflection and celebration. Although May 3rd, 1922, not a complete victory for women, as some minorities still remained excluded, it was the very first of many steps moving forward for women. And the PEI Museum and Heritage Foundation has, just sent a number of these buttons, and I apologize to our male councillor colleagues because there was only a certain number for the three of us, but we still really enjoy working and appreciate working with you, although sometimes we try to run it. Anyway. Thank you for working with us. Anyway, the other thing I will just close on this, the foundation and the PEI Coalition for Women in Government will recognize this momentous occasion on a panel discussion Saturday, May the 7th, and this will allow the panelists to discuss the impact of women being involved, winning the right to vote, and you lucky gentlemen having the privilege of us working with you as colleagues. And the foundation is also finalizing a traveling exhibition in honor of the suffrage movement. This exhibition will detail the women and events that led to most island women winning the vote in 1922, and stories of women who have changed our politics and our province in the past 100 years since then. The exhibition will be on display this summer at the 7 museums of Basin Head, Beaconsfield, Elmira, Eptech, Green Park, Orwell Corner, and Musée Acadien. And I think it's really nice. And the nicest thing about the letter that came is that our first mayor of Summerside, first Acadian mayor, businesswoman, mother of 5, and a very, very community-minded person, Mayor Frances Perry. She will be included in that collage of women who have made an impact, and she certainly has impacted me, as you all know. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor McCollum. Do you have anything further in your committee, Councillor?
No, I do not. I'll adjourn the Police Committee meeting.
Thank you very much. So, who's, Councillor Adams, you filling in for the community services, or is there anything? Pardon?
Sorry.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. Yes, so I'll adjourn the committee's, or call it to order. It was just in regards to the boardwalk damages. And I believe, well, it's something we all have been receiving calls on and so on. But Bruce, did you want to speak on that? Or sorry, Councillor McDougall?
Yeah, I had talked to city on this, and I asked to have it put on. I think one thing that we can all agree on is the boardwalk is one of the crown jewels in the city. And there's a lot of people use that boardwalk. You know, whether you're a walker, a jogger, or you're a baby in a stroller, or you're in a wheelchair, biker, you know, everybody gets to use it and enjoy the beautiful scenery down there. Over the last few weeks, and I had supplied the city with some pictures, damages done to birdhouses, and just uncalled for, and it's so disappointing. I walk down there every morning, and you know, on the weekends, there's usually something that happens. There's signs, you know, for, you know, whether you're not to feed the squirrels or feed them at your own risk, but in order to read that, you're gonna have to go half mile in the woods to find the sign. And those things are unacceptable, and I think it's time that we put some trail cams down around that area. I really hope that I can get the support around here to put some cameras down, because everybody you meet that we're walking down there, I don't know why you don't put cameras. I don't know why you don't put cameras. But anyway, I think it's a very valuable asset, and you know, one person stopped me and said, "It's a dollar store birdhouse." I said, "Yeah, but to a kid that put that up with their parents, it's probably worth $1 million." And that's the thing that's wrong. You know, there was a lot of damage down there. I personally built a new one and put it out there, but I really think that we need to have some cameras down there to catch the vandalism. So appreciate it. Thank you.
So, what is the request here for this year, next year, or tomorrow?
I would like for staff to review it and to see if there's, you know, I don't think, some of these trail cams are not, do a cost analysis on it. Some of these trail cams are not very expensive. A lot of them run by solar and that type of thing. I have a camera on mine in case anybody's interested in tearing it apart.
Like, Bruce, would you need the night vision ones, like you know, because it's usually in the night that they're down there, you know?
I don't think so, because it's lit really well down there.
Yeah, no, and I was just, you know, wondering, because I think for safety, like, I think even people that walk down there in the dark in the evenings
But most of the
and,
trail cams
you know,
are night vision. Anyway.
right, right. Anyway,
So
I don't disagree with that.
You're asking management to look at the possibility?
Yeah, I would ask management to have a look at installing some cameras down there, look at the cost and you know, yeah, put them, yeah, so,
Thank you.
appreciate it, thank you.
So is that it for community services, Councillor Adams? Okay. I believe that's all. There's one more item for the committee of the whole, I believe. So let's take a 2-minute stretch or 3 minutes, and we'll adjourn these and come back afterwards for a committee of the whole meeting. Okay, we'll give Brian